What happens when young lives take a dark turn, leaving devastation in their wake? In this video, we're counting down the 53 most disturbing teen killers reacting to insane sentences. From explosive courtroom reactions to chilling stares, these teens face the shocking reality of their actions and the lifelong consequences. Case number 7 will haunt you, but number 3 will leave you speechless. Rebecca Walker and Gavin Smith were teenagers in love, but their parents were strongly opposed to their relationship. As a result, they were forbidden from seeing each other. Despite this, the couple defied their parents' wishes and continued to meet and communicate with each other secretly. Through text and video chats, they maintained a bond that grew stronger with each passing day. Over time, Gavin's frustration and anger became more evident. Sometimes he ran away from home, only to be brought back by the police. This constant cycle of running away and being caught only served to fuel his rage. According to Rebecca, Gavin's anger would escalate and he would express thoughts of wanting to kill his family. Rebecca, blinded by her own desire for love, agreed with Gavin's idea that they could be together by eliminating his family. They believed that by removing this obstacle, they could finally be free to pursue their love without interference. On December 13, 2020, Rebecca and Gavin had been on a video call, during which Gavin revealed to Rebecca that he had a gun and a knife in his possession. Alarmingly, Rebecca testified that she knew Gavin was planning to kill both his mom and stepdad.
To read the letter she wrote, admitting her role and remorse for the murders of her 16-year-old boyfriend's family.
During the call, Rebecca actively supported and encouraged Gavin to commit the murders. In a shocking turn of events, Rebecca admitted to sending text messages to Gavin while he was on the video chat with her, telling him to hurry up and do it. Eventually, both Gavin Smith and Rebecca Walker were arrested in relation to the death of Gavin's stepfather, Dale Long, 37 years old, his mother, Risa Saunders, 39 years old, and his younger half-brothers, Gage Rippler, 12 years old, and Jameson Long, 3 years old.
Her attorney trying to explain how the 17-year-old who had recently lost her mother was manipulated by the boy, whose first-degree murder case is still in juvenile court.
Rebecca Walker pled guilty to 4 counts of accessory after the fact of first-degree murder as part of a plea agreement. In exchange, she received a 10-year sentence. To secure her testimony against Gavin, the prosecution dropped the murder charges against her. In 2022, Gavin's trial began, and Rebecca Walker was one of the first witnesses to testify against him. As she took the stand, it was evident that she was nervous and hesitant to answer questions posed by the prosecution. Gavin's defense questioned Rebecca about her previous statements, in which she encouraged Gavin to hurry up and do it, in reference to killing his family. However, Rebecca was quick to clarify that she was not physically present when the crime was committed. Instead, she claimed to have been on video chat at the time of the murder. In January 2023, Gavin was sentenced to 3 life sentences with mercy for the first-degree murder, 40 years for the second-degree murder, and 10 years for the firearm charge. Rebecca Walker and Gavin Smith's chilling crime was a disturbing act of betrayal. But the next case is even darker. Brian Lee Draper, a teenager inspired by horror movies, who turned fiction into a terrifying reality.
Our first victim is going to be Cassie Stoddard. She's going to be alone in a big, dark house out in the middle of nowhere. How perfect can you get?
Brian Lee Draper attended Pocatello High School and bonded closely with his best friend, Troy Adamczyk. Brian and Troy shared a passion for movies and aspirations of pursuing careers in the film industry. This common interest brought them closer, and they often collaborated on creating their videos. On September 22, 2006, Cassie Stoddard, a classmate and friend of Brian and Tony, was house-sitting for her aunt and uncle. With their permission, she invited her boyfriend, Matt Beckham, to hang out that night. Brian and Troy arrived at Cassie's aunt and uncle's house as the night progressed. However, Brian and Troy got up unexpectedly and left, telling Cassie and Matt they were heading to the movie theater.
Hello, Cassie. I'm getting you on tape, okay? Say hi, please. Hi. Okay, see ya.
Little did Cassie know that Brian and Troy, her 2 supposedly trusted friends, had sinister plans in mind. Before they left, Brian, unbeknownst to Cassie, unlocked the basement door, setting the scene for a horrifying turn of events. Brian and Troy parked their car down the street dressed in dark clothes, gloves, and scary masks, and returned to Cassie's aunt and uncle's house. After Matt left Cassie's aunt and uncle's house, Brian and Troy seized the opportunity. They turned the circuit breaker off, hoping Cassie would come downstairs and flip the switch, leading her into a trap. However, Cassie remained upstairs. As Cassie remained upstairs, unaware of the danger awaiting her, Brian and Troy silently made their way up the creaking basement stairs. Armed with a dagger and hunting knife, they confronted Cassie in the living room. Brian and Troy stabbed her over 30 times. The investigation into Cassie's murder quickly focused on Brian and Troy, and as investigators gathered evidence, they discovered a partially burned VHS tape. Upon closer examination, it revealed that Brian and Troy had meticulously documented their plans to murder Cassie.
Good luck. Hopefully you don't have to get through 8 or 9 failures like we have.
Yeah, we probably tried like 10 times.
Brian and Troy were charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder for Cassie's murder. In 2007, Brian and Troy went on trial for their heinous crime. According to the prosecution, Brian was deeply influenced by the infamous Columbine shooters, Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris. The prosecution argued that Troy murdered Cassie because he was obsessed with the horror movie Scream. From the gruesome depiction of the stab wounds inflicted upon her to the disturbing footage of their well-planned and executed murder, every detail presented at the trials painted a chilling picture of their sadistic nature. The medical examiner's testimony revealed the extent of the brutality inflicted upon Cassie Stoddart. He described multiple stab wounds, including deep lacerations to her neck, chest, and abdomen. Throughout the trial, Brian and Troy sat silently, in stark contrast to the boisterous demeanor they had displayed in their videos, where they excitedly talked about Cassie's murder. Their once cocky smiles were replaced by anxious glances and shifting in their seats. It was evident that they were deeply scared of the potential consequences they faced. The change in their behavior was striking. They seemed like completely different individuals, a far cry from the boisterous teenagers who had bragged about their exploits in the video. Their body language and demeanor betrayed their true selves, scared little boys who were now facing the consequences of their actions. Despite their efforts, Brian and Troy were found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Brian Lee Draper's twisted, premeditated crime was chilling, but the next case reveals a shocking act of violence driven by jealousy and revenge. Joshua Coleman, a young man whose actions left lives shattered and a community in disbelief. Deasia Green, a 15-year-old girl, was a chronic runaway, often disappearing for days. However, when her parents reported her missing in early January 2013, the police knew something was different this time. Her parents gave the authorities detailed information, hoping to bring her home safely.
Last year, Toledo police found the 15-year-old girl dead in an alley in the 1300 block of Page.
Just 6 days after she was reported missing, Deasia's lifeless body was found in an alley. She had been shot once in the head. The police were immediately called to investigate, and a crime scene was quickly established. Through their investigation, the police obtained a crucial eyewitness account. This witness claimed a 15-year-old boy named Joshua Coleman was the one who fatally shot Deasia.
As Green's mother asked him why he killed her daughter.
Why would Joshua do this to her? She didn't deserve it. She was a social butterfly. She didn't deserve it.
4 days after the discovery of Deasia's body, Joshua was arrested and charged with murder and felonious assault. He was swiftly indicted as an adult, a decision that shocked many given the age of both victim and perpetrator. According to sources, Deasia and Joshua had been dating shortly before her death. Joshua Coleman's attorneys and prosecutors eventually reached an agreement. The prosecution agreed to drop the charges of felonious assault and the gun specifications in exchange for Joshua receiving a life sentence, but being eligible for parole in 2039. During the sentencing hearing, the prosecution told the court the motive for Joshua's shooting of Deasia was never determined.
The last time I seen my baby was December 31st. That was the last day I seen my baby. The last time, y'all.
Deasia's mother delivered a devastating victim impact statement. She described Deasia as a social butterfly, full of life and joy. Throughout the trial, Joshua remained silent, only answering yes and no questions from the judge. His lack of remorse further enraged Deasia's loved ones.
In her murder later this month, he was sentenced to 15 years to life behind bars.
During the sentencing phase, the judge asked Joshua if he wanted to give a statement or explain the motive behind the shooting. However, Joshua declined, leaving many unanswered questions. Without the eyewitness's testimony, there may never have been justice for Deasia. The police, acknowledging this witness's crucial role, credited that person for their bravery and determination. It was the eyewitness's testimony that ultimately led to Joshua's conviction. Joshua Coleman's violent crime shocked everyone, but the next case is even more unsettling. Gregory Ramos, a 15-year-old who committed an unthinkable act against his own mother, all to cover up a lie.
Around midnight, he allegedly sneaked into his mom's room and strangled her. Then he went to get a wheelbarrow to bring the body out of the house.
Gail Clevenger, a deeply religious woman, was known for her sweet, kind nature and ability to get along well with everyone. In 2018, Gail's son Gregory reached 15 and began attending University High School. Gail would drive Gregory to school each day, but behind the facade of a seemingly innocent teenager, there was a diabolical plot brewing. In November of 2018, everything took a tragic turn. Gregory returned home to find his mother, Gail, waiting for him. An argument soon began, with Gail expressing her disappointment over a D grade he had received in class. Like any teenager, Gregory ran to his room and slammed the door. However, Gregory was plotting something sinister behind that closed door. At midnight, he emerged from his room and walked towards his mother, who was sound asleep. Gregory placed his hands around Gail's neck and strangled her. Gregory believed that he had successfully killed his mother when he left her bedroom and headed to the backyard. He got a wheelbarrow, thinking it would be the perfect tool to transport the body. As Gregory returned to his mother's bedroom, he found that she was still breathing, leaving him with no choice but to continue his deadly assault. Finally, Gregory felt his mother's last breath. Relief washed over him. He cautiously approached the body, confirming for himself that she was no longer alive. Gregory then placed her body in the wheelbarrow and loaded it into the family car. Gregory left DeBerry and headed towards Daytona Beach. However, he quickly realized he had forgotten a shovel and turned around midway through the ride to retrieve it. As he returned home, Gregory called two of his friends. Together, they planned to hide electronic and valuable items from Gregory's house to make the scene look like a burglary. After hiding the items, he transported his mother's body to River City Church. There, he buried his mother's body beneath a fire pit. Following these heinous crimes, Gregory calmly went to a Circle K store, where he purchased soda as if nothing had happened. The following morning, Gregory went to school. However, when he returned home, he called 911, reporting a robbery. When the police arrived, Gregory explained that his mother was missing, but her car was still in the driveway.
Checked the entire house because I was looking for her, but she's not here. I just got home, and my house is completely trashed.
Initially, the police believed Gregory's story that he was worried for his mother's safety. However, as the investigation unfolded, the case details raised suspicions and led to the discovery of the tragic truth. As detectives dug deeper, they noticed inconsistencies in Gregory's story. Despite claiming to be a concerned son, there were discrepancies. The detectives grew suspicious of Gregory's involvement in the crime.
He called police and claimed there had been a break-in at the house and his mom was missing. This is police body cam video.
As the questioning continued, Gregory's statements became more incriminating. He eventually admitted to murdering his mother and implicated his two friends who helped him cover up the crime. Gregory revealed that he had planned and executed the murder with the help of his friends on May 31, 2019. After Gregory admitted to killing his mother and disposing of her body at the church, investigators headed there, where they uncovered Gail's remains. In addition to uncovering Gail's remains, investigators also seized several items from around the fire pit. A shovel and broom, seemingly used to assist in burying the body, were carefully collected as evidence. Following Gregory's confession and the successful recovery of Gail's remains, the Volusia County Sheriff's Office swiftly moved to bring charges against him. Gregory was arrested and charged with first-degree murder, abuse of a dead body, and tampering with evidence. Despite being 15, Gregory was charged as an adult due to the severity of his crimes.
It's the murder case shocking America. A 15-year-old confesses to strangling his mom over a bad grade.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood addressed the media, expressing his outrage at Gregory's heinous crime. Sheriff Chitwood called Gregory a soulless individual who believed himself to be the smartest person in the room. According to Sheriff Chitwood, Gregory even went so far as to express his belief that he deserved an award for his skillful performance in reporting his mother missing during a 911 call. In January 2021, Gregory accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 45 years in prison. During the sentencing hearing, the judge granted Gregory an opportunity for parole after he served 25 years in prison. His attorney expressed hope that Gregory would use his time in prison to reflect upon his actions and work towards becoming a productive citizen.
A Volusia County teen accused of murdering his mother, Gregory Ramos, has pleaded guilty more than 2 years after detectives say the then 15-year-old strangled his mother to death over a fight.
One of the most poignant moments of the hearing came when Gregory's 84-year-old grandmother, who was also the victim's mother, was granted the opportunity to confront him face to face. This moment was a bittersweet reunion, as the older woman expressed her unwavering support for her grandson, despite her deep sense of loss. Even though she lost her daughter, she expressed her hope for Gregory's future, and assured him that she would always be there for him. Gregory expressed remorse for his actions and apologized to his family. However, his words did little to alleviate the pain and loss felt by his family. He acknowledged the severity of his actions and admitted that he was not making excuses for himself. Gregory Ramos's chilling betrayal of his own family was haunting, but the next case is even more brutal. Thane Ormsby, a young man whose senseless and violent rampage claimed 3 innocent lives.
3 people are dead, including a 10-year-old boy, and state police are calling their deaths a homicide. Investigators say a relative found the bodies last night in a mobile home.
Whether you ask people in the tiny Aroostook County town of Amity or state police around here, the answer is the same. They don't think there's ever been a triple homicide in this area.
On June 22, 2010, Thane Ormsby, a teenage student from Ellsworth High School, carried out a gruesome attack in Amity, Maine. At around 5:30 p.m., he entered the home of 55-year-old Jeffrey Ryan and began a rampage that resulted in the senseless murder of Jeffrey, his 10-year-old son Jesse, and a family friend, Jason Dehan, who was 30 years old.
Jason and Jesse ran to the back room. So I chased Jesse, and he was the quickest.
Following the stabbing, Thane fled the scene, triggering a search that lasted several months. In July 2010, he was arrested on a fugitive from justice charge in Dover, New Hampshire. After months of searching, the police finally tracked him down and brought him to justice. Thane was extradited from New Hampshire to Maine, where he was placed at the Aroostook County Jail. According to Thane, he killed Jeffrey Ryan because he was convinced that the man was selling drugs. He also revealed that he killed Jason Dehan and Jeffrey's young son because they were witnesses to the crime.
Wearing a pinstripe suit, Ormsby had to wipe the tears from his eyes as his mother described the long way she says he has come after a childhood of abuse and neglect.
Thane was charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 count of arson. He pleaded not guilty at his arraignment. However, several months later, he entered a second plea, not guilty by reason of insanity.
His 10-year-old son Jesse and Jason Dehan, Ormsby did not shed a single tear.
For the murder of Jeffrey Ryan, it is my sad but solemn duty.
In 2012, Thane, now 21, found himself on trial at the Holton Superior Court. The charges were serious, 3 counts of murder and 1 count of arson. However, Thane's defense team argued that he was insane at the time of the triple homicide. Jurors ultimately rejected this defense and sentenced him to 3 life sentences and a sentence of 15 years for the arson conviction. News that a teenager had committed such a heinous crime was met with widespread outrage and disbelief. Many people found it incomprehensible that someone so young could possess such extreme violence and disregard for human life.
To sentence you to life in prison. For the murder of Jesse Ryan, it is my sad but solemn duty to sentence you to life in prison.
Thane filed an appeal with the Maine Supreme Court 1 year after his sentencing. One of his primary claims was that the police violated his Fifth Amendment rights when they interviewed him in July 2010 following the murders. However, in a unanimous ruling, the Supreme Court dismissed his appeal, stating that no mistakes were made in allowing Thane's statements to be used during his trial and sentencing hearing. Thane Ormsby's senseless rampage was horrifying, but the next case reveals a different kind of darkness. Janine Gonzalez, a woman whose involvement in a brutal and calculated crime, shocked everyone who knew her. On August 11, 2022, a tragic incident occurred in Gwinnett County, Georgia, when 30-year-old Ashley Bocanegra was rushed to the hospital. According to her sister, when Ashley arrived, she was experiencing difficulty breathing and was airlifted to another facility for emergency surgery. Unfortunately, she didn't make it, succumbing to her injuries. An investigation ensued, and detectives discovered that Ashley had been the victim of a brutal assault that led to severe injuries. Her ribs were fractured and her liver was damaged, ultimately leading to her death. The detectives' investigation led them to an apartment complex in Beaufort, Georgia, where they apprehended 2 suspects. 27-year-old Antonetta Stevens from Beaufort and 17-year-old Janine Gonzalez from New York.
We just got another call about it. So I guess the girl went to the hospital and she died.
She died?
She's dead.
Antonetta told detectives that she was dating Janine's brother, only to discover that he and Ashley had been in a romantic relationship. And not only had her boyfriend been cheating on her, but he had a 7-year-old child with Ashley. According to Antonetta and Janine, an altercation began when Ashley arrived at the apartment complex looking for Janine's brother. However, when the detectives review Antonetta and Janine's cell phones, the images, videos, and text messages tell a different story. The evidence suggests that Ashley's killing was far more deliberate than the two initially claimed.
Yep, this is what we do. If I get mad and he knows I'm leaving, he feels sad. He says, I'll let you her up. That's what I'm doing. You up. All right. Tell me everything. Hey, you got it. Get off. Nope.
The text messages on Antonetta and Janine's phones shed light on their planning and orchestration of the crime. It became clear that they had lured Ashley to their apartment under the pretext of meeting Janine's brother. Once Ashley arrived, Antonetta and Janine confronted her and secretly recorded the entire incident.
No, you ain't got. You don't get to say something. My man, right? You want to be in front of my man, right? Right? You his manager? I'm getting you fired. That's bias. Okay, so that's a conflict of interest.
Captured by the girl's cell phone, the video begins with Janine being filmed as Antonetta advances towards Ashley. With brutal force, Antonetta grabs hold of Ashley's hair and forcibly pushes her down. As Ashley struggles to regain her bearings, Antonetta repeatedly punches her in the face, causing her to cry out in pain.
You're f***ing my while he's on the clock. My going there trying to ruin his family. He has a whole son. You're mad for him? Okay.
Janine is then seen joining in on the violence, delivering a series of kicks to Ashley's side. Throughout the ordeal, Janine can be heard taunting Ashley, threatening to kill her no fewer than 5 times.
For sure, you know? Yeah.
So Antoinette just sent the message
I'm
first.
positive myself. I'm positive. But yeah, I don't know if there's any messages sent to that lady.
Janine Gonzalez and Antonetta Stevens were charged with robbery, battery, and felony murder. When the detectives confronted Janine, despite her being only 17 years old, she displayed a cold and callous demeanor. She laughed even though an innocent woman was dead and her nephew, only 7 years old, was left without a mother.
Janine Gonzalez started her court appearance in tears before a Gwinnett County police officer laid out the murder charge against her.
During one of Janine's pretrial hearings, she was visibly distressed as the judge laid the case against her. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and the prosecution was determined to prove that Janine was not only an accomplice but also a willing participant in the murder of Ashley. Janine's defense attorneys argued that she was a bystander, but the clear imagery on the video contradicted these claims. The footage clearly showed Janine actively participating in the assault, leaving no room for doubt as to her involvement.
Gonzalez's attorney argued that she was practically a bystander.
Given that, I think the case ought to be found over as involuntary manslaughter and not as felony murder.
Janine's defense team also argued that she should be tried for involuntary manslaughter rather than felony murder. However, the prosecution had strong evidence from Ashley's text messages that implicated Janine in the assault. In a message to her boyfriend, Janine's brother, Ashley wrote, "I was fine until your sister kicked me in the chest and back area." The message provided a crucial link between Janine and the injuries sustained by Ashley. Despite the efforts of Janine's attorneys, she was eventually convicted of voluntary manslaughter and robbery by force. Alongside Antonetta, Janine was sentenced to serve a 20-year sentence in Arundel State Prison. While Janine's crimes were severe, 16-year-old Dylan Shoemaker's are far more chilling. He targeted a defenseless 1-year-old baby, making her actions pale in comparison.
Austin Smith was killed last week, just days shy of his 2nd birthday.
10-year-old Dylan Shoemaker is accused of murdering Smith, who would have turned 2.
In March 2013, Dylan Shoemaker, a 16-year-old, was babysitting his girlfriend's son, Austin Smith, who was nearly 2 years old. Austin's birthday was just 4 days away, but unfortunately he would never celebrate his 3rd birthday. According to Austin, he lost his cool with the toddler, leading to a horrific chain of events.
Tonight, we get our first look at the 16-year-old who's accused of killing a little boy in Springville.
At his trial, Dylan claimed that he became frustrated with Austin and resorted to slapping him, spanking him, and ultimately slamming the boy into the floor. As if that weren't enough, Dylan proceeded to punch the toddler in the head several times, all in an attempt to get the child to stop crying. The injuries sustained by Austin proved to be fatal, with his cause of death being ruled as blunt force trauma.
Deputies upon arrival immediately noted the bruising about the face and head of the child.
Dylan Shoemaker was arrested and faced charges of 2nd-degree murder and 1st-degree assault. He entered a not guilty plea. In December 2013, Dylan faced trial for the murder of Austin Smith. The tragic incident had left everyone in shock and disbelief.
I didn't mean to kill Austin. Ashley, I really didn't think I did that. I didn't mean to hurt him.
As the trial began, Dylan's defense attorney made a plea to the jury to find Dylan guilty on a lesser charge, which would have given Dylan freedom someday. Yet, despite the defense's best efforts, the jury returned a verdict of 2nd-degree murder. At the sentencing hearing, Dylan was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison.
Dylan Shoemaker walked into a state Supreme courtroom pleading his case, telling his victim's mother and the court he's remorseful for what he did.
When the verdict was read, relatives of baby Austin cried from the gallery. Austin Smith's grandmother even expressed sympathy for Dylan, saying he was only 16 and his life was now over before it even started.
Shoemaker and his defense attorney fought for the minimum sentence, 15 years to life.
I can't take back what was done. I wish I could. I would give my life for Austin.
According to Dylan's attorney, Dylan was subdued after hearing that he had been found guilty of second-degree murder. However, a news report from Buffalo News paints an entirely different picture of this young murderer. The state Supreme Court justice who sentenced Dylan admitted that he had 13 letters written by witnesses and relatives who called Dylan a manipulator and deceiver. These letters revealed him to be a cunning and manipulative young man, completely different from what was presented during the trial. Further, in a viral video, Dylan claimed because he was a blonde, all he needed to do was cry for a lenient sentence. Dylan Shoemaker's crime was a tragic act of rage with devastating consequences, but the next case is equally heartbreaking. Carly Madison, a young woman whose actions led to a senseless and avoidable tragedy.
She was having a mental health crisis.
She doesn't know what was going on at that time. We're asking you to find her not guilty by reason of insanity.
Prosecutors say she shot her mother, Ashley Smiley, a 40-year-old high school math teacher, in the face.
On March 19, 2024, a friend of 14-year-old Carly Gregg reached out to Ashley Smiley, Carly's mother, expressing concerns about her daughter's excessive use of marijuana. The friend revealed that Carly had been indulging in the drug and using burner cell phones, raising alarms about their well-being. Determined to act, Ashley decided to confront her daughter about the rumors. After speaking to Carly's friend, Ashley made her way to Carly's bedroom. What she discovered there shocked her. Several vape pens lay scattered across the bedroom. Alarmed, Ashley quickly wanted answers.
The jury seeing 5 days of disturbing evidence, including this surveillance video. First, you see Greg with a gun behind her back, pacing around the home.
That afternoon, security camera footage from inside the home captured a chilling scene. Carly, dressed in a Nirvana t-shirt, moved around the house, seemingly hiding something behind her back. It turned out to be a .357 Magnum handgun. As Carly walked out of view from the camera, the sound of 3 gunshots shattered the silence. The footage then showed Carly rushing back to the kitchen, where she sat calmly on the stool at the counter. She took out her phone and texted a friend, asking them to come over because there was an emergency. When Carly's friends arrived at the house, Carly asked them if they had ever seen a dead body. Without further explanation, Carly took them into her mother's bedroom, where Ashley lay lifeless, her face soaked in blood. According to this friend, Carly confessed that her stepfather, Heath Smiley, was next on her list. Using her dead mother's phone, Carly, pretending to be her mother, sent a message to Heath. The message read, "When will you be home, honey?" Little did Heath know that this message was a carefully crafted trap.
Her stepfather, Heath Smiley, coming home moments later, Greg also shooting him.
When Heath arrived at the front door, Carly ambushed him, shooting her stepfather in the shoulder. Despite the injury, Heath managed to take control of the situation. He overpowered Carly and took the gun away from her, ultimately saving his own life. In a panic, Heath called for help. Police officers arrived swiftly, along with paramedics. Carly was arrested on the spot. As investigators delved into Carly's background, they discovered a diary that shed light on her darkest thoughts. The journal revealed a list of beliefs that painted a chilling picture of Carly's twisted mind. Among these beliefs were statements such as, "There is no God," "It's okay to be evil," and "There is no need for family." The prosecution offered Carly a 40-year plea deal before her trial. However, she declined the offer. Carly's case quickly gained media attention, and the trial commenced 6 months later, in September 2024.
Tonight, a Mississippi teen sentenced to life in prison without parole for murdering her mother and attempting to kill her stepfather.
During the trial, the prosecution presented a compelling argument, painting Carly Gregg as a calculating and cold-hearted killer. They alleged that Carly intentionally shot and killed her mother, Ashley, after Ashley discovered her secret marijuana use. The prosecution described Carly as a dangerous young lady who showed no remorse for her actions and planned the attack on her stepfather.
We, the jury, sentenced the defendant Carly Madison Gregg to life imprisonment.
The defense, on the other hand, presented a different narrative to the court. They claimed that Carly was in the midst of mental health struggles at the time of the crimes. A psychiatrist testified that Carly's mood swings were exacerbated by the medication she was taking. This psychiatrist argued that Carly's actions were not premeditated, but were driven by her unstable mental state. According to the psychiatrist, Carly's mental health struggles played a significant role in her violent actions. To support this claim, the defense presented Carly's journals as evidence, which revealed a young woman in mental turmoil.
I need to get some information from you. What is her name again?
Carly, C-A-R-L-Y.
C-A-R-L-Y?
Carly Madison.
During the trial, the prosecution presented the body cam footage captured by the police officers at the scene. The video depicted the chaotic aftermath of the murders. As officers arrived at the scene and conducted their investigation, Carly sat at the defense table. She stared intently, her eyes fixed on the screen. As Carly watched the footage, tears welled up in her eyes. The once composed and confident teenager was overcome with emotion. One of the key witnesses in Carly's trial was her stepfather, Heath.
Went off in my face before the door was, I don't know, 3 or 4 inches wide open.
Heath testified about the tragic events that led to his wife's murder. He stated that despite Carly's actions, he still had a good relationship with her. This statement shocked the public, as it seemed incomprehensible that he could maintain a bond with someone who had shot him and taken the life of his wife. In their closing argument, the prosecution reminded the jury that Carly knew the difference between right and wrong when she committed the murder. After careful consideration, the jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before delivering their verdict. They returned a guilty verdict, finding Carly guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Carly, who was only 15 years old, was found guilty of first-degree murder. Speaking to WLBT in an exclusive interview, Kevin Gregg, Carly's biological father, said he was embarrassed, angry, upset, and very sad about his daughter's actions. Currently, Carly is being held in the Youthful Offender Unit at the Central Mississippi Correctional Facility. The defense attorneys have indicated that they plan to appeal Carly's conviction. However, given the severity of her crime and the public outcry, it seems unlikely that the appeal will successfully overturn the verdict. Carly Madison's tragic actions left a community reeling, but the next case is even more chilling. Michael Swanson, a young man whose brutal actions were driven by rage and a complete lack of remorse.
It's cold-blooded murder. Cold-blooded murder, young man.
It's not uncommon to see a teenager commit a robbery, but 17-year-old Michael Swanson would take it too far when he not only robbed 2 convenience stores, but ended up gruesomely murdering the attendants. His reaction to being sentenced for these crimes sent shockwaves down the spine of everyone in court. On Monday, the 15th of November, 2010, at the age of 17, Michael Swanson allegedly stole his mother's car and his grandfather's .40 caliber handgun and drove to northern Iowa in search of a thrill. Just after 9 p.m. that day, a young man wearing a ski mask walked into a Crossroads gas station in Algona, Iowa, where he demanded cash and cigarettes from the clerk, 47-year-old Vicky Bowman Hall. Despite complying with his request, the young man chose to shoot her anyway, leaving her for dead as he fled the scene in a Jeep Grand Cherokee. About an hour later, the same young man appeared at a come-and-go convenience store in Humboldt, about 30 miles south of Algona, where he once again demanded cash from the clerk, this time 61-year-old Sheila Myers. Despite Myers handing him the cash he'd asked for, he had already made up his mind just like the prior incident and shot her anyway, in the face, from only 2 feet away. She died instantly and he quickly fled the scene once again. That young man turned out to be 17-year-old Michael Swanson. Before committing those murders, Swanson had driven from St. Louis Park to northern Minnesota to Iowa in a car he had stolen from his mother, Kathleen, along with her debit cards earlier that morning. This wasn't the first time he had stolen his mother's car, his mother, Kathleen, testifying that he'd had violent and sometimes criminal tendencies since he was a toddler. When he was only 11, she was told by a psychiatrist that he was a lost cause when she reported to them that he was a threat to their family members. Swanson had been clinically diagnosed with a host of mental disorders, including ADHD and bipolar disorder, amongst others. One time in 2006 for assembling and storing dangerous weapons, which his aunt discovered in a car trunk after she demanded the money he had stolen from her nonprofit organization where he was doing community service. These dangerous behaviors were a well-known ticking time bomb that would eventually lead Swanson to his downfall. During the second murder, police had received reports of the first from witnesses and began tracing the trail to Swanson. Swanson had managed to get to a McDonald's in Webster City, about 60 miles from Algona, before he was caught and arrested. The police officers also recovered the stolen money and cigarettes, as well as the handgun he used in perpetrating the murders. When interrogated over the murders, Swanson told the police that he shot them so they wouldn't be able to call police or identify him. During his prosecution, Swanson showed no remorse over his actions, as he confessed there was a deliberate attempt to murder Myers. Swanson was eventually charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of robbery. At his first hearing over the murder of Myers in June 2011, the jury reached a quick verdict and Swanson was found guilty of both charges, after which he flipped off the TV cameras. At his second trial that July, he was also found guilty of the robbery and murder of Bowman Hall. For his role in the murders of Myers and Bowman Hall, a then 18-year-old Swanson was handed 2 life sentences without the eligibility of parole. During his sentencing, Swanson could be seen smiling and laughing as his verdict was read.
Blooded murder, young man. And your counsel wants us to believe that you lack the capacity, that you were insane.
Jillian, the daughter of Bowman Hall, confronted Swanson in an emotional statement, calling him a weak coward.
My mom was not only completely 100% innocent, but she was also a defenseless woman when you came in with that gun.
Johnson reportedly told a psychiatrist that he had been fascinated by murder and committing acts of violence since he was 13, and intended to wait until he was 18 so he could kill his parents, who he had planned to be his first victims. In 2013, Swanson's sentence was revised to 60 years before parole eligibility by the governor of Iowa, Terry Branstad, who decided to commute the life sentences of 38 Iowa inmates who had been convicted as juveniles. In November 2014, Swanson was charged with attempted murder while in prison for attacking a fellow inmate with a knife. He was convicted of this charge in 2015 and sentenced to an additional 25 years in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 2089 at the age of 96. Michael Swanson's chilling crime shocked many, but the next case is just as unsettling. William Riley Gall, a young man whose jealousy turned deadly, leading to a brutal and senseless murder.
It's Friday night. The lights. The band.
Emma Walker was a Central High School teenager known for her compassionate nature and kind heart. She aspired to become a neonatal nurse and dedicated her life to helping others. Her life took a turn when she started dating Riley Gall, a charismatic and popular young man.
And in the fall of 2014, there was a new girl whose spirit was sparkling, 14-year-old freshman Emma Walker.
Initially, Emma and Riley's relationship seemed to be filled with promise and joy. Riley doted on Emma, showering her with attention and affection. Emma, in turn, seemed to be deeply in love. However, beneath the surface, there were signs that something was amiss.
On the outside looking in, you just think he's just a normal guy.
Friends describe him as a jokester.
Emma and Riley encountered challenges early in their relationship despite their apparent connection. Riley was already in a relationship with someone else when they started dating. However, he promised Emma he would end things with his girlfriend and be with her exclusively. However, he never followed this promise, even attending the prom with his girlfriend.
We were happy for her, that she found someone that she really liked.
Her social media splashed with pictures of the perfect pair.
As time went on, a controlling side to Riley began to surface. He grew intolerant of Emma spending time with boys who were not him, and imposed strict rules on what she was allowed to do. Despite their efforts to make it work, their relationship was plagued by constant fights and disagreements. In November 2017, Emma decided it was time to end the toxic relationship for good. However, Riley refused to listen, resorting to threats and self-harm in order to get Emma back. When Emma finally mustered the courage to end things for good, Riley resorted to drastic measures.
Since 16-year-old Emma Walker was killed inside her Knoxville home by her ex-boyfriend.
On November 18, 2016, Riley, consumed by jealousy and desperation, faked his own kidnapping. He concocted an elaborate plan to trick Emma into feeling sorry for him and ultimately returning to his side. However, Emma was unconvinced and refused to let him manipulate her emotions. Frustrated and desperate, Riley made a tragic decision. Several nights later, on November 21st, after midnight, Riley headed straight to Emma's house. Armed with his grandfather's gun, he aimed and fired 2 shots into the corner of the home. One of the gunshots struck Emma in the back of the head, killing her instantly.
And I think him being older, she looked up to him and listened to him.
Things started normal for the teenage couple.
Seemed very healthy in the beginning.
When Emma's mother left for work the next morning, she found her daughter lying lifeless in her bed. Horrified and devastated, she immediately called 911 to report the tragic incident. Law enforcement arrived on the scene and launched an investigation. Detectives had initially believed Emma took her life. But when a second bullet hole was discovered in the wall and 2 shell casings were found outside the house, the case took a twist. The authorities then classified her death as a homicide.
Gall killed her by shooting through the walls of her home as she slept in her bed.
I had called 911. Then later on, we didn't know at the moment, but later on we did find out it was a shooting.
Riley Gall emerged as a prime suspect in Emma's murder, and the evidence gathered pointed strongly towards him. Two close friends of Riley's, recognizing the severity of this situation, decided to collaborate with the detectives to bring justice to Emma and her family. Under the guise of playing a harmless video game, these two teenagers secretly wore a recording device to gather evidence against Riley. They intended to uncover Riley's involvement in Emma's murder and expose the truth.
I told them all the truth, like where I was, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Played during his trial a secret video of Riley Gall taken by his friends.
During the meeting, Riley denied killing Emma, but did show them the gun. On April 30th, 2018, Riley stood trial for Emma's murder. The defense argued that Riley did indeed shoot Emma, but that it was not a premeditated murder. Their defense was that Riley's actions were driven by a desire to win Emma back and orchestrate an elaborate ploy to win her affection.
They paid careful attention over the past 7 days and came back with a just verdict that will hopefully give some measure of peace.
However, the prosecution argued that Riley knew exactly what he was doing when he fired the bullet into Emma's bedroom wall. They maintained that the shot was intentionally aimed at Emma's head, leaving no doubt that he intended to kill her. The prosecutors asserted that Riley's actions were premeditated and driven by jealousy and a desire to possess Emma at any cost.
First and foremost, I would like to sincerely apologize to the Walker family for causing nothing but pain and turmoil to their entire family.
On May 8, 2018, Riley was found guilty of multiple charges, including first-degree murder. Following the guilty verdict, the judge handed down a sentence of life without the possibility of parole for 51 years. This sentence was met with mixed reactions from Riley and his legal team. Riley apologized to Emma's loved ones. 3 years after his conviction, Riley filed a petition for a new trial, citing insufficient evidence to support his conviction. However, his motion was denied by the court, leaving him imprisoned for life. Riley turned his attention to the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals, hoping that his case would be reviewed and his sentence reduced. In February of 2023, the appellate judge upheld Riley's murder conviction, denying his appeal. William Riley Gall's crime was driven by jealousy and rage, but the next case takes a different turn. Jennifer Mee, a young woman whose role in a gruesome murder shocked the nation.
I get really bad chest pain, abdominal pains, throat pains, back pains.
Jennifer Mee, also known as the Hiccup Girl, first gained attention in 2007 at 15. Her unique condition, a long-lasting cause of hiccups, made her an instant sensation. She appeared on several TV shows and became a household name, captivating audiences with her quirky personality and infectious laughter.
Lots of water.
Other suggestions have been impractical or illegal.
Somebody told me to smoke marijuana, take a hit of marijuana, that would help. Yeah.
But you're not going to go that route.
Oh, definitely not.
As Jennifer's fame faded, her life began to unravel. She met her boyfriend, Lamont Williams, and together they embarked on a dangerous path that led to murder and a lifelong sentence.
After her boyfriend, LaRon Rayford, caught the two in the act, but that didn't come out in court today.
Were you faithful to LaRon? Yes.
Jennifer and Lamont began searching for victims online, targeting vulnerable or unsuspecting individuals. They would befriend these individuals, gaining their trust, and then lure them to vacant homes under the pretense of a meeting or business opportunity. Once inside, Jennifer and Lamont would rob their victims at gunpoint.
Jennifer Mee appeared on closed-circuit TV for less than 30 seconds.
By probable cause, your bond is currently zero. Can you afford a lawyer to help you?
However, on October 8, 2010, their plans went tragically awry. Jennifer, Lamont, and their accomplice, LaRon Rayford, lured 22-year-old Shannon Griffin to a vacant house in Tampa, Florida. Once inside, the three teenagers robbed Shannon, and he was fatally shot 4 times with a .38 caliber handgun. Through meticulous detective work, police were able to uncover incriminating evidence, leading to the arrest of Jennifer, Lamont, and LaRon. All three confessed to their involvement in the crime and were charged with murder.
I heard shit.
Did you see the actual shooting happen or no?
No, sir.
What happened after the gunshots? Tell me what happened.
I didn't stay long. I left.
During Jennifer's trial, the prosecution played a recording from a jailhouse phone call between Jennifer and her mother, where Jennifer admitted she did not physically kill anyone, but said she set up the situation. However, experts testified that Jennifer's DNA was discovered on the victim's shirt. Her attorneys sought to portray her as suffering from schizophrenia, arguing that her mental condition rendered her unable to stand trial. After a court-ordered evaluation, it was determined that Jennifer was competent to stand trial.
You can see that Mee broke down right as that verdict was read. She was obviously hoping that the jury would convict her on a lesser charge, perhaps accessory to murder or manslaughter. Now, though, she'll spend the rest of her life behind bars.
In 2013, 3 years after Shannon was killed, Jennifer was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Her accomplices were also convicted and received life sentences. The public was in disbelief that the internet sensation Hiccup Girl had been convicted of such a heinous crime. Many criticized the sentence, arguing that it differed from what would be imposed on a male offender facing similar circumstances.
I couldn't even tell you, I got cased up with the wrong crowd of people, really. Unfortunately, when I started experimenting with drugs, I just felt like I was invincible to everything.
Jennifer sought a new trial following the conviction, but her appeal was denied. The ruling solidified Jennifer's fate, leaving her to serve a life sentence in a correctional facility. This case serves as a reminder that even individuals who achieve fame and success through online platforms can face serious consequences for their actions. Brace yourself for the chilling story of Jordan Wade, a teen who shockingly took 4 lives in a brutal act of violence.
The crime last summer seemed almost unthinkable. 4 victims forced to the basement of a home on Hudson Street near Cleveland Avenue.
Wade's trial began in May of this year. It was May 20th that a jury found him guilty on all charges. Today, Wade was given 172.5 years in prison.
In 2015, Jordan Wade and Robert Lee Adams committed a horrific crime that resulted in the tragic deaths of 4 people. This heinous crime took place in South Linden, Columbus, Ohio, and left the community in shock. At just 16 years old, Jordan Wade and 27-year-old Robert Lee Adams carried out a robbery and execution-style murders that left the victims dead from multiple gunshot wounds,
where they were ordered to lie on the floor before being shot in the head. The victims were Michael Ballore, Angela Harrison, Daniel Sharp, and Taisha Nelson.
Among the victims were 41-year-old Michael Ballore, 26-year-old Daniel Craig Sharp, 35-year-old Angela Harrison, and 18-year-old Taisha Nelson. These individuals were senselessly gunned down by Jordan and Robert, leaving behind grieving families and friends. A 15-year-old girl who miraculously escaped with her life after being grazed in the head by a bullet was also present during the shooting.
Police say Wade and Robert Lee Adams were at the home of Michael Baller. They say Adams shot Baller and 4 other people in the basement.
Terrified that Jordan and Robert might finish her off, the teenage girl took drastic measures to save her own life. She pretended to be dead, lying motionless among the bodies. After the duo fled the scene, the teenager managed to stumble out of the basement where she had been shot, seeking assistance. Miraculously, the teenager survived and eventually recovered from the incident. Once in stable condition, she provided crucial information to the police, helping them locate Jordan and Robert, which led to their arrests.
The gunman, 28-year-old Robert Lee Adams, he's set to go to trial in January. He faces the death penalty if convicted.
During their trial, the prosecution alleged that Jordan and Robert had robbed the victims, ordered them down to the basement, and that Robert was the one who fired the weapon that killed them. Jordan's defense attorneys argued that he wasn't the one who fired the gun and suggested he only took part in the crime because he was trying to impress the older Robert Adams. However, the prosecution claimed that Jordan was an active gang member at the time of the quadruple homicide, with a long criminal history, even though he was a juvenile. Jordan had been found guilty of committing aggravated arson at only 12 years old. The prosecutor alleged that Jordan had never taken responsibility for the murders and had the audacity to claim it was a cover-up.
Wade's trial began in May of this year. It was May 20th that a jury found him guilty on all charges.
When the judge handed down the life sentences, Jordan reacted with shock and disbelief. He appeared stunned, unable to comprehend the magnitude of his actions and the life-altering consequences he faced. His defense attorneys argued that Jordan was young and impulsive and deserved a chance at rehabilitation. Still, the prosecution maintained that the gravity of the crimes warranted the harshest punishment possible.
Wade was not the gunman, but prosecutors say he helped Robert Lee Adams rob and trap the victims in the basement. Wade was a juvenile at the time.
In a letter read to the court, the surviving teenager shed light on Jordan's devastation and expressed her hatred for him. The letter painted a chilling picture of Jordan as a manipulative and ruthless individual. The teenager described how Jordan's actions had shattered her mind, heart, and soul, leaving her with a profound sense of loss and despair.
Her testimony will be key to the prosecution's case. Wade was 16 years old at the time of the crime and is the first of 2 suspects to stand trial.
At the end of the letter, the teenager conveyed a sense of satisfaction, stating that it felt good to know Jordan would spend the rest of his life behind bars, forced to reflect on the lives he destroyed. Jordan Wade's tragic crime left a community devastated. But the next case is even more chilling. Sean Sellers, a teenager whose brutal actions at a young age led to a life sentence.
And I walked into their bedroom wearing just a pair of black underwear after doing a ritual that night, and I shot them both in the head as they slept.
In March 1986, a heinous crime shook the Oklahoma City community when 2 people were killed in their own homes. The victims, Vonda Bellafato and her stepfather Lee Bellafato, were gunned down in their sleep by one of their family members, their 16-year-old son, Sean Sellers. To try and limit the amount of blood that would splatter onto his body, Sean brazenly shot Lee first, dressed in nothing but his underwear. The sound of the first shot woke up Vonda, who then found herself face to face with her killer. Sean pulled the trigger, ending her life with a single shot to her face. After committing these heinous crimes, Sean attempted to stage the crime scene to make it appear that an intruder broke into the house and killed his parents. However, the detectives were smarter than Sean and quickly debunked his elaborate ruse. He was arrested for the murder of his mother, Vonda, and stepfather Lee.
So we began to prove our allegiance to Satan by breaking God's commandments. And in the end, there was only one that remained unbroken.
Sean confessed to the police that he had also murdered Robert Paul Bauer, a 32-year-old cashier from Circle K who refused to sell him beer in 1985. This shocking revelation added another chilling chapter to Sean's already disturbing story. During Sean's trial, he claimed that he suffered from demonic possession and that forces beyond his control drove his actions.
You shall not murder. So, in the Satanic Bible, the copy I had, I think they have edited that out of it since then, but the copy that I had...
Sean Sellers argued that he had read Anton LaVey's The Satanic Bible several times between the ages of 15 and 16, and it was during this time that he committed the murders of Robert Bowers and his parents. His attorney also painted a different picture, alleging that the fantasy game Dungeons & Dragons motivated his client to commit the 3 murders. The defense argued that the game had warped Sean's mind and introduced him to dark, violent themes that influenced his actions.
Lonely jail cell on death row, Sean began to see and experience the love and forgiveness of God. He started to cry.
The jury found Sean guilty of all 3 murders and sentenced him to death in 1986. People expressed outrage and disbelief that a teenager could be given a sentence of death. Sean's age, being just a teen at the time of the crimes, raised questions about the legal system's ability to distinguish right from wrong when sentencing a minor. Many argued that Sean's young age should weigh heavily in his favor, as he was still developing mentally and had not yet reached full maturity. Despite his efforts to secure an appeal, Sean's fate was ultimately sealed. He was executed by lethal injection on February 4th, 1999. In his final moments, Sean requested a simple meal, egg rolls and shrimp. Next, we move to the tragic story of Austin Myers and Justin Back, a case that starts with a simple robbery plan but escalates into a horrifying murder.
The sentence of death shall be imposed upon Austin Gregory Myers on the charge of aggravated murder.
Myers once again showed no emotion.
On the 28th of January 2014, Justin Back, an 18-year-old, was murdered in Waynesville, Warren County, Ohio, by 2 young men who had broken into his family home to steal a safe from the house. Those 2 men were Timothy Mosley and 19-year-old Austin Myers, whose evil plans ruined not just the life of an innocent boy and his family, but also theirs. Back was childhood friends with Myers when they were in middle school, as they both attended the same high school. He only graduated high school in 2013 and had plans to join the U.S. Navy. However, his dream would be cut short by a man he used to call his friend. On the day before Back's murder, Myers suggested a plan to make a quick buck to Mosley. The plan was to commit a robbery, and there were 2 potential targets, a substance dealer or Back's stepfather, Mark Cates. Myers was aware from his friendship with Back that Cates had a safe in his family home where he potentially kept thousands of dollars and a gun. Mosley agreed to Myers' plan to rob Cates, and both young men drove to Back's home with intentions to break into the safe. However, on getting there, they realized that Back was home, so they made a new plan, this time to murder Back, cart away with the safe, and make it seem like Back had stolen the safe and run away from home. Myers bought a 3-foot-length steel cable and fastened it into a choke wire. The next morning, Myers and Mosley purchased various chemicals and rubber gloves in anticipation of having to dispose of a body. The pair drove to Back's home that afternoon with the intention of catching him off guard with the choke wire. Oblivious to their plans, Back let them into the house, and all three men had a short discussion before they finally had their moment to strike. Mosley saw a chance to attack Back from behind with the choke wire. However, Back fought back, and in the resulting scuffle involving all three men, Mosley had to stab Back from behind before Myers continued choking him. Mosley continued to stab Back around the chest area until he was finally dead. Myers and Mosley cleaned up the kitchen where they killed Back before wrapping his body in a blanket and throwing it into the trunk of Mosley's car. The young men eventually decided to hide the body in a field and poured on some of the chemicals to speed up decomposition of the body. Myers and Mosley headed back to Back's place for one last attempt at the safe, but once they opened it, they found out there was only loose change and some random items inside. Cates came home to find his home trashed and quickly contacted the police. He also couldn't find Back despite finding his phone in the house, so he knew something was wrong. This was confirmed when the police described sighting a car which Myers had used to visit Back the previous day. Myers was eventually found, detained and questioned, but he denied having anything to do with Back's disappearance or the burglary. Mosley was also questioned and initially denied the allegations. However, at a second round of interrogations, Myers tried to implicate Mosley, who, upon hearing the false confession, decided to tell the truth. Back's body was eventually found, and it was determined that he had died of the multiple stab wounds, and both Myers and Mosley were accused of having a direct role in his murder. Myers was charged with 1 count of aggravated murder, 1 count of kidnapping, 1 count each of aggravated robbery and burglary, 1 count of theft, 1 count of tampering with evidence, 1 count of safe-cracking, and 1 count of abuse of a corpse.
That the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the aggravating circumstance outweighs the mitigating factor. Therefore, the sentence of death shall be imposed upon Austin Gregory Myers on the charge of aggravated murder.
Following his sentencing hearing, Myers showed no emotion but admitted to his horrible mistake and asked for his life to be spared. He also told the jury that killing him won't fix anything and that he wouldn't feel anything. Myers' sentencing caused some media uproar, as his accomplice, Mosley, received a life sentence without parole due to a plea bargain despite being the one who pulled out a knife and made the first stab. Myers, who is now 29, is currently imprisoned at the Chillicothe Correctional Institution, while Mosley is housed at the Ross Correctional Institution. Austin Myers may have stayed stone-faced, but Derek Rosa's devastation over his own actions tells a very different story. You won't want to miss what happened next.
What is the best place to stab someone? Is a small knife good for killing?
The case of Derek Rosa is a bizarre one, not just because of his age, but also the circumstances surrounding it and the manner in which he perpetrated the crime. Why a 13-year-old 8th grader would murder his own mother so gruesomely is up for debate, but his reaction in court was heartbreaking to say the least. On the night of Thursday the 12th of October 2023, 39-year-old Irina Garcia was asleep at her Hiley apartment complex at 211 West 79th Place, Florida, when she was suddenly attacked by her son, Derek, who stabbed her multiple dozen times with a small knife. Shortly after committing the murder, Rosa surprisingly called 911 to inform them of what he had done, and police officers arrived moments later to find the dead body of his mother in her bedroom next to the crib where her 14-day-old baby lay unharmed. Rosa, who had reportedly contemplated committing suicide, was swiftly arrested and taken into custody for questioning. Rosa's actions were shocking, to say the least. He had previously shown no real signs of mental illness and was said to be an honor roll student at school. When the news spread of his actions, no one could understand what could have been the motive behind it. Rosa also didn't stop at the brutal murder of his own mother. He went one step further and called an online friend to show them what he had done. He sent them 3 photos, including one where he was standing over his mother's corpse, and another of a pink-handed kitchen knife with blood on it, as well as a selfie of himself. Rosa was said to have also made several online searches to know how best to commit the stabbings. This was further evidence that the murder of his mom was premeditated. Following his arrest, Rosa was interrogated by detectives and confessed to killing his mother. 46 times he reportedly stabbed her, which meant he had continued to stab her even after she was probably dead. Video footage from the doorbell camera of the apartment also surfaced and showed events from a few hours before the murder was committed.
That moment right before and after he is accused of stabbing his mother to death.
At a pre-trial hearing in December 2023, Rosa, who had dozens of supporters in court including his maternal grandmother and his father, was questioned over his actions following his confession. Rosa was absent at his next court hearing on April 3, 2024, but he was represented by his family and tens of supporters who crowded the entrance to the court. Another hearing was set for May 2024. During his December 2023 court interrogation, Rosa became emotional as his confession to the investigators was being played in court.
The chilling interrogation video played in court. 13-year-old Derek Rosa allegedly confessing to brutally stabbing his mother, Irina Garcia, to death.
He put his head down as he appeared to begin crying, feeling devastated as the true extent of his actions dawned upon him. In reaction to the horrific confession, the judge ordered that he be held at an adult jail. Rosa pled not guilty to the charges, as he is set to be charged with first-degree murder as an adult and awaits trial for his verdict. Depending on how he is tried, he could face anywhere between 20 years and life imprisonment for his actions. Rosa, still only 14, is currently being held at the Metro West Detention Center, but his attorneys are reportedly pushing to have him moved back to a juvenile detention center, as they continue to push against the prosecutor's wishes to charge him as an adult. Investigations are still ongoing, so the fate of Rosa is left to be unknown. While Rosa killed his own mother, Sky Boucher had a plan for his devastating school shooting.
That's why I put down the gun. I could have kept going. There was no officers there to stop me. I put it down because there was a girl there. She didn't run from me. She just, I shot through the door. I could have shot her, but I don't know.
Before embarking on his deadly mission, Sky Boucher meticulously planned every detail. Sky placed his shotgun into his guitar case. He then took 2 Phenibut, a psychoactive substance banned in the United States but available online. Additionally, Sky placed a tactical vest in his backpack and approached Forest High School. When Sky arrived at Forest High School, he saw a teenage girl walking by. However, instead of pulling the trigger, he hesitated. This unexpected moment of clarity may have prevented a more devastating outcome. Instead of targeting innocent lives, Sky fired his weapon through a classroom door, striking a student in the ankle. Minutes after firing the shotgun, Sky was arrested by a school resource officer. As the police approached, Sky had his hands up and surrendered, claiming he had a mental illness. Sky's motive behind the chilling act was to inflict fear in students, according to his statements. He claimed that he never intended to kill anyone, but rather wanted to terrorize the school population.
Watch your back.
Did you intend on shooting anybody else?
Why today?
According to Sky, he had nightmares that prompted him to plan and perform the shooting. These disturbing dreams fueled his desire to take action and carry out a violent act. Sky admitted that he wanted to go to jail. He believed that being incarcerated would prevent him from committing another shooting in the future, fearing that he could be a danger to himself or others.
I put it in a guitar case, and I also had a tactical vest filled with shotgun slug rounds.
Sky admitted that he purchased the gun 1 week after the Marjorie Stoneman High School shooting in Parkland. This private cash sale did not require a background check. He was charged with terrorism, aggravated assault with a firearm, carrying a concealed weapon, and armed trespass on school property.
What do you have to say to people who are out there who are scared because of what you did today?
I don't know if it's going to make it any better. I could say sorry all I want, but it doesn't matter now.
Faced with the possibility of a lengthy prison sentence, Sky decided to plead no contest, resulting in a 30-year sentence with an additional 30 years of probation. During the sentencing hearing, Sky's grandmother, Linda Costello, was allowed to make a statement on his behalf. Speaking via Zoom, she described her grandson as a nice person and expressed her remorse for his actions. According to Linda, Sky had expressed a desire to make a positive impact in the community by sharing his story and urging other teenagers to stay away from illegal substances purchased over the internet. Sky Boucher's shocking crime was devastating, but the next case is even more heartbreaking. Jasmia and Tasmia Whitehead, 2 sisters whose brutal actions against their own mother left everyone in disbelief.
Twins share everything. Birthdays, clothing, even DNA. But Jasmia and Tasmia Whitehead also share a dark past.
Jasmia and Tasmia Whitehead are identical twins to Jarmeka Yvonne Nikki Whitehead. Due to their mother's absence, these twins were raised by their great-grandmother. Despite the lack of parental guidance, Jasmia and Tasmia were academically successful, being honor roll students and Girl Scouts. However, their harmonious upbringing was disrupted when their mother sought custody in 2007. The relationship between Nikki and her twin daughters turned sour as conflicts arose over Nikki's attempts to assert control in their lives. The twins, feeling resentment towards their mother, expressed their dissatisfaction through physical confrontations. As a result, they found themselves seeking counseling together as a family. Eventually, the court intervened, granting custody of the twins back to their great-grandmother. However, this temporary arrangement only lasted a few weeks, as the court decided to hand custody back to Nikki on a 2-week trial basis. On January 13, 2010, several days after Jasmia and Tasmia returned to Nikki's care, the girls called 911 and reported they found their mother dead. Nikki had been beaten with a vase and stabbed several times. Initially, the police treated Jasmia and Tasmia as victims. The medical examiner called Nikki's murder a crime of passion due to how brutal it was and felt whoever killed her was not a stranger. After Nikki's murder, the detectives investigated her boyfriend as a suspect. However, he was ultimately cleared through DNA testing. It wasn't long into the investigation of Nikki's murder that Jasmia and Tasmia's lie unraveled. Bite marks and other injuries on the girls' bodies implicated them in their mother's murder. The twins began to tell the truth and said their mother, Nikki, threatened them with a pot on the stove, and a fight ensued. Jasmia admitted to breaking a vase over her mother's head, while Tasmia said she used the pot to attack her mother. They explained that their mother, who had a knife, started to stab them. As the assault on Nikki continued, her twin daughters overpowered her and dragged her to the bathtub, where she ultimately died. On May 21, 2010, Jasmia and Tasmia were charged with murder. Everyone was shocked that such innocent-looking twin teenage girls could commit a crime as horrific as what happened, especially to their mother. The type of murder that the twins committed is called matricide. Matricide refers to the act of murdering one's mother. It is a particularly heinous crime. In 2014, Tasmia pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter, making false statements and possession of a knife during a crime. The judge sentenced Tasmia to 30 years in prison and is currently serving her sentence in Arundel State Prison. 1 month later, Jasmia pleaded guilty to the same charges as her twin sister, and she is also serving her 30-year sentence in Pulaski State Prison. Jasmia and Tasmia sealed their mother's fate, while Dexter Johnson and his friends turned a simple robbery into a deadly murder.
Dexter Darnell Johnson, the jury has found you guilty of capital murder. In accordance with the laws of the state of Texas, this court hereby assesses your punishment of death. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is going to complete your jury service. I'm going to meet you in the jury room.
In the early hours of Sunday, June 18, 2006, in Harris County, Texas, 5 young adults were riding in a black Nissan Sentra looking for someone to rob. They were Ashley Irvin, her brother, Lewis Irvin, Keith Ron Fields, Timothy Randall, and newly turned 18-year-old Dexter Darnell Johnson. After minutes of scanning the area, they came across a parked blue Toyota Matrix, which had 2 people sitting inside. 23-year-old Maria Aparici and her 17-year-old boyfriend, Hui No. Johnson swiftly left the vehicle and approached the blue Toyota while holding a shotgun. On getting there, he stood outside the driver's door and threatened to shoot the passengers if they didn't cooperate. Little did they know that their fate had already been sealed. Following the threats by Dexter Johnson, Maria Aparici and Hui No decided to comply and made their way to the back seat of the Toyota, where they were joined by Lewis Irvin, while Fields climbed into the passenger seat, which had been vacated. Johnson then started the Toyota and began driving around the block as he asked for money, while Ashley and Randall followed behind in their vehicle. Eventually, both vehicles stopped near a wooded area. Then Fields forced No out of the Toyota and held a gun to his head while Johnson up Parisi right there in the car. After Johnson finished, he and Fields marched the couple into the woods and shot each of them in the head before driving back to their apartment, as Randall and the Irvins followed behind. They even used Aparisi's credit card to purchase gas for both vehicles on their way back. 2 days later, on the 20th of June 2006, Fields' mom, Felicia Williams, called the Humboldt Police Department to inform them about 3 suspicious vehicles which were parked in the parking lot of her apartment complex. Officers responded to the call and discovered that all 3 vehicles had been reported as stolen, including a blue Toyota Matrix. The next day, the mother of the 14-year-old girl also called the attention of the police department after she failed to return home past her curfew. When the officers arrived, the girl had returned, and on further questioning, they found out that she had been with Johnson earlier that day. The police officers headed to William's apartment and found Johnson smoking and in possession of some marijuana. They also found a shotgun under one of the beds, which Johnson admitted to owning. As a result, Johnson was arrested for possession of marijuana, and his shotgun was also confiscated. Around this time, Aparici's father had already reported her disappearance to various police departments. When Everett Hargrave, a detective in charge of the investigation, became aware of the blue matrix recovered in Humble, the dots began to connect. Ngo's family had also reported his disappearance, and Aparici's father reported the use of her credit cards, so the detective went on a search for more clues and was able to access footage which showed two black males using the credit card at a Walmart in Humble. Johnson, who was still in custody, was called in for questioning and initially denied the allegations. However, Hargrave didn't buy the lies and instructed the Harris County District Attorney's Office to charge him with aggravated robbery. Johnson was also transferred to the Harris County Jail on the same day. On the 23rd of June, Randall was also arrested and interrogated, and he eventually ended up showing the officers where the bodies of Aparici and Ngo were. Around that time, the Irvins were also arrested and questioned. That evening, Johnson was transferred to the Houston Police Department's Homicide Division, where he was questioned and admitted to Aparici, but denied shooting the couple with his shotgun. By the time Johnson and all four of his accomplices had been interrogated, it was alleged that the deaths of Aparici and Ngo were part of a 25-day crime spree perpetrated by the crew, which resulted in 5 deaths. For his alleged role in the murders, Johnson was charged with 2 counts of manslaughter and sentenced to death in 2007. Johnson looked pretty disappointed on hearing the sentence as he fell deeply into his seat in confusion.
Your punishment of death. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is going to complete your jury service. I'm going to meet you in the jury room.
Following over a decade on death row, his execution was initially set for the 2nd of May 2019, but it was postponed 90 days to the 15th of August due to issues with his lawyers. However, a day before the new execution date, the Court of Appeal decided to stay the execution with a ruling that permitted Johnson to litigate his claim that he was ineligible for the death penalty due to an intellectual disability, as he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. Today, Johnson, who is now 36, remains in custody and awaits a final verdict on his case. Our next case takes a dark turn, where Michael Bargo's jealousy escalated into cold-blooded murder.
Shane Bargo Jr. should be sentenced to death, yes.
Michael Bargo holds his head after hearing he is sentenced to death for the 2nd time on Tuesday.
On the night of April 17, 2011, 18-year-old Michael Shane Bargo and 4 of his friends, Amber Wright, Kyle Hooper, Charlie Ellie, and Justin Soto, schemed in the gruesome murder of 15-year-old Seth Jackson. The motive? A toxic mix of youthful recklessness, jealousy, and spite. Seth Jackson had dated Amber Wright for just over 3 months before the couple had a bitter breakup in March 2011. After the breakup, Wright became romantically involved with Michael Bargo, but continued to send text messages to Jackson. This obviously made Bargo jealous when he found out. For weeks leading up to his murder, Jackson was repeatedly threatened by Bargo, including cases at Wright's home and one at his own home, with his mother reportedly once hearing Bargo tell her son that he had a bullet with his name on it. During that same period, Ellie, who lived in a 2-bedroom home in Summerfield, Florida, had allowed some of her friends, including Bargo and Hooper, to move in with her. On the day of the murder, Bargo assembled his roommates, first informing Hooper, who had apparently lost a love interest to Jackson, that he wanted to make a plan to murder Jackson. Later that afternoon, Bargo got Wright to use text messages to lure Jackson over to Ellie's home, with the plan being to ambush him once he got into the apartment. Jackson was initially skeptical about Wright's texts, but decided to go visit anyway, despite the warnings of his close friend, William Samalot. After arriving at Ellie's home, Jackson sat down waiting to speak with Wright before Hooper, who was in one of the rooms, grabbed a wooden object, then ran into the living room, where he delivered a blow to the blindsided Jackson. Bargo, who followed closely behind, then shot at Jackson, who managed to survive the initial rain of bullets and ran out the door. However, Jackson didn't make it very far before he was tackled by Soto and shot at by Bargo once again. The two boys then beat him up further before his almost lifeless body was carried back into the apartment and put in a bathtub. Bargo's plan was to make sure that the last face Jackson would ever see before his death would be his, and he made sure of this by delivering the final shot to Jackson's face. Bargo and Soto disposed of Jackson's lifeless body, putting it into a sleeping bag and burning it in Ellie's fire pit. The following morning, Wright's stepdad, James Havens, arrived at Ellie's home to help dispose of Jackson's remains, which he dumped at a remote water-filled rock quarry. The following day, police arrived in the neighborhood to investigate the reported disappearance of Jackson. Bargo had to stay away, and Havens tried to help by sending him to stay with the family of his girlfriend, Kristen Williams. However, despite not knowing the Williams, Bargo told basically everyone that cared to listen what he had done, with subtle twists to the story. On the 19th of April 2011, law enforcement finally arrived at the Williams home and took Bargo into custody. Even after his arrest, Bargo continued to tell on himself, informing a fellow inmate of what he had done. After the police obtained multiple search warrants, his revolver was also found in Ellie's home, with the box found in his grandmother's home. The fire pit in Ellie's home was also discovered to contain possible human remains. Jackson's remains were eventually found underwater beneath the Ocala quarry, and his DNA was strongly matched to that of the missing person they were looking for. Despite all of his prior comments linking himself to the murder, Bargo initially denied his involvement when interrogated in court, claiming that he had only participated in disposing of Jackson's body and suggesting that Hooper may have done the deed and implicating the rest of his friend group. Despite his attempts to retell the story during his trial, Bargo was eventually charged with first-degree murder with a firearm and was found guilty in August 2013 by a jury who overwhelmingly recommended that he be sentenced to death, despite family and friends testifying in his favor.
The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree with a firearm, as charged in the indictment. So say we all, dated this 20th day of August 2015.
Bargo's attorneys appealed the verdict, claiming that there was insufficient evidence and that Bargo had been deprived of a fair trial amongst other arguments in his case. The Florida Supreme Court eventually ordered a new sentencing hearing because the jury recommendation wasn't unanimous, being a 10-2 verdict. However, it eventually became unanimous in the resentencing on September 12, 2019, and Bargo was set to face the death penalty.
Should be sentenced to death, yes.
Michael Bargo holds his head after hearing he is sentenced to death for the second time on Tuesday.
Now 31, Bargo is currently spending his last days at the Union Correctional Institution. In the next case, Rachel Schoaf and Sheila Eddy made the chilling decision to kill their friend, Skylar Neese.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if there's a proper way to make this apology because there are not even words to describe the guilt and remorse that I feel each day for what I've done.
This is Rachel Schoaf, and she's charged with the murder of Skylar Neese when she was only 16 years old. On July 6, 2012, 16-year-old Skylar Neese disappeared from her home in Star City, West Virginia, and was not found until January 16, 2013. Unfortunately, only Neese's body was found with the help of one of the murderers, Rachel Schoaf. The other person who was charged with the murder of Neese was Sheila Eddy. Schoaf and Eddy were friends with Neese until their friendship turned sour. According to Schoaf's confessions, the motive for murdering Neese was that they didn't like her and didn't want to be friends with her anymore. The surveillance of the apartment where Neese lived showed that Neese left her home at 12:30 a.m. through her window and entered into a sedan with Schoaf and Eddy. That was the last time anyone besides Schoaf and Eddy saw Neese alive. Because of this, Neese was first treated as a runaway until the police discovered that the sedan on the surveillance belonged to Eddy.
Rachel and Sheila drove around Star City and in the area, preparing themselves. They had concealed knives on their bodies that had been wrapped in towels by Sheila Eddy, and they took that shovel with them, and they arrived at Skylar's home and told her they were waiting for her. They were waiting to kill her.
When Schoaf and Eddy were questioned, they said they had hung out with Neese but dropped her off at home an hour after they left. At this point, Neese hadn't been found. However, on January 3, 2013, Rachel Schoaf suddenly admitted that she and Eddy had plotted to kill Neese. She also led them to where they left Neese. Skylar Neese had been stabbed to death almost 30 miles away from her home, before Schoaf and Eddy dumped her body and covered it up with branches. It was not until years later that Schoaf finally gave the real motive behind the murder: According to her, she and Eddie had been in a romantic relationship and Niece caused tension between the couple, leading them to get rid of her.
I'm so sorry. I don't know if there's a proper way to make this apology because there are not even words to describe the guilt and remorse that I feel each day for what I've done.
Shove pled guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for cooperating with the authorities to find her victim. In court, she apologized for her actions and showed remorse for what she did. She was teary as she apologized to Niece's family and her parents. Eventually, it was time for sentencing.
It is the sentence of the court that you be imprisoned in the West Virginia State Penitentiary for a period of 30 years.
Rachel Shoaf was sentenced to 30 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10 years. On May 9, 2023, Shoaf became eligible for parole and bid for it. She was denied parole and remains in custody. Shoaf and Eddie murdered Niece because of romantic tension. But how does it compare to murdering one's grandparents for no apparent reason, as Johnny Ryder and Cassandra Bjork did?
All right, Ms. Bjork, you are charged with 2 felony warrants for murder, 2 felony warrants for aggravated assault.
On April 8, 2017, Gwinnett County, Georgia experienced the shocking and brutal double murders of 63-year-old Randall and Wendy Bjork. The two were grandparents to 17-year-old Cassandra Bjork. They had gotten legal custody because she had issues with her parents. Despite the grandparents' best efforts to give Cassandra a good life, she became more troubled and would run away from home from time to time. She also brought home drugs and assaulted her grandmother on multiple occasions. She also had a boyfriend, 19-year-old Johnny Ryder, who she ran away with many times. The couple were described as volatile and toxic. Eventually, they committed worse crimes. On April 8th, the police responded to an assault case in a home in Lawrenceville, and the victims identified the attackers as Johnny Ryder and Cassandra Bjork. The two of them had attacked Johnny's sister and her boyfriend with a baseball bat and pepper spray before escaping. The car they used to escape belonged to Wendy and Randall, and this led the police to force their way into the home, as they expected the worst. To their horror, they found the bodies of Wendy and Randall. The two of them had been stabbed multiple times. Their autopsies showed that they had suffered blunt force to the head and various cuts around their throats. Everyone was horrified that something like that had happened in their community. Cassie and Johnny became the main suspects in the case, and a day after the Bjorks were found, their granddaughter and her boyfriend were found after they barricaded themselves inside an apartment. They refused to come out, and by the time the SWAT team was able to get a visual, they found out that the teens were injured in the bathroom as they had tried to commit suicide. They failed this attempt and were taken to the hospital. The two of them were charged with the murders of Cassie's grandparents. The interrogation revealed some shocking details that showed that the murder had been premeditated.
It seems that you're sorry you got caught, that you had people over after. You don't seem to be sorry that you killed your grandparents.
Cassie told the police that they had planned to murder her grandparents and keep their bodies from being discovered. According to Cassandra, she and Johnny waited until her grandparents were asleep before entering their bedroom, duct taping and attacking them. The murder weapons included a tire iron, a baseball bat, a hammer, and butcher knives. The two of them beat and stabbed the Bjorks to death. What's even more horrific is that after the murders, Cassandra sealed the windows and doors with caulk to keep the smell of the decomposing bodies from coming out.
And then we came back to the house.
When you guys left, where'd you guys go to?
We went over to like Kroger or Publix to go get something to eat, and then we went back to the house and we just kind of like chilled there.
Which one?
It was like on Old Peachtree.
Johnny and Cassie then ordered takeout and invited their friends to the house for a party. She also said that they smoked a lot of weed to mask the smell of the bodies, as they were in the house for more than a week.
Things like just seemed different. They didn't look at me the same anymore. Like they didn't, I don't know, it's like the vibe that they have was like, they didn't really know what to do. They didn't really know like how to be around me, I guess. They didn't really know how to talk to me.
The motive for the murder was shocking. Cassie said she killed her grandparents because they were too strict. She also said that her grandparents weren't the only intended victims. According to her, she and Johnny had planned to kill Johnny's family and Cassandra's mother. They both took a plea deal and didn't go to trial. Both of them were sentenced to 2 life sentences, each with the possibility of parole after 60 years. When the two heard their sentences, their reactions were different from each other. While Johnny apologized for what he did, Cassie was said to have been crying and refused to say anything even when she was given the chance to speak. The two would be eligible for parole in 2077. This case bears some semblance to the next one, but what do we say of an adult helping a minor to kill her father like Ellen Fryer.
I've seen all different kinds of people, and now see humanity from a new, compassionate perspective.
This is Ellen Fryer, and she is being charged with a felony of conspiring to murder her father with the help of her 19-year-old boyfriend in 2017. On October 2, 2017, 50-year-old Aaron Fryer and 15-year-old Ellen Fryer were reported missing by Aaron's girlfriend after Aaron's younger daughters had found blood in their home. Aaron's 11-year-old daughter said she heard her father yelling in the morning but didn't come down until later. Then she recalled hearing the voice of Gavin McFarlane, Ellen's 19-year-old boyfriend. Aaron's body was found a week later in the woods. Based on the statements that Ellen's siblings had given, Ellen and her boyfriend were brought in for questioning, and the details that were revealed will shock you. According to Ellen, her father had told her that she could not be with Gavin because she was a minor and Gavin should know better. Before the unfortunate murder, Aaron had forbidden Gavin from seeing his daughter again, and even threatened to kill him if he saw him near his daughter again. Ellen allegedly told the police that her father had been abusive and that she wanted to run away together with Gavin. According to her, Gavin had shown up with 22-year-old Russell Jones with a machete in hand. She told the police that 22-year-old Jones had attacked her father, and she ran away when she heard yelling. However, the story that Jones told the police was different. He told them that it was Gavin who had killed Aaron with a baseball bat. He said that he had walked into the house to see Aaron's body on the floor. Jones said that the only role that he played in the murder was helping Gavin to get rid of the body. He also said that Ellen had been the mastermind behind it all. Gavin McFarlane admitted to killing Aaron Fryer, but there was a sickening twist.
I didn't want to kill him. I didn't want to kill him. She wanted him dead, but I didn't want to kill him. I was like, I'm not going to kill him. She was all like, no, I don't want him around him.
Ellen had told Gavin that her father had abused her, and that she was 2 weeks pregnant as a result. Except Ellen wasn't pregnant, and Aaron Fryer hadn't been abusive. He was just trying to protect his daughter from Gavin, who was eventually found guilty of third-degree rape because he had sexual relations with Fryer as a minor. Gavin then revealed that Ellen had told him to kill her father. He said she told him this: "Go out in the front room, take him out and text me, and let me know when it's done." After this was revealed, Ellen pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Gavin McFarlane was found guilty of homicide and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. At her sentencing hearing, Ellen apologized for her actions and said that she was spending every day asking for forgiveness because she found God during the period that she was awaiting sentencing. She will be eligible for parole in 2041. Ellen Fryer's tragic story of loss and revenge was heartbreaking, but the next case is even more chilling. Julio Cesar Rivera, a man whose violent crime took everyone by surprise.
But the robbery suspect didn't understand it had a keyless starting system. He says the man turned violent and started pistol whipping Alana.
On November 2, 2021, at approximately 3 p.m., 18-year-old Julio Cesar Rivera II approached Alana Castaneda at Whole Foods Market in the Alamo Quarry Market. Little did she know Julio was armed with a gun and prepared to carry out a robbery.
When his daughter found a gun in her face, she tried to give up her car, and he says that woman who helped his daughter in her greatest hour of need, he says that woman's a hero.
As the confrontation unfolded, Alana and Julio began struggling as Julio attempted to steal her vehicle. In the chaos, the weapon went off, striking Alana in the head. The gunshot echoed through the bustling marketplace, attracting the attention of bystanders and witnesses.
God send everyone. I have never felt this much love in my life.
In the aftermath of the shooting, Julio fled the scene, leaving Alana bleeding on the ground. However, officers swiftly caught up to him a short while later, finding a handgun in his possession. Alana miraculously recovered, but that night's impact would forever haunt her. As investigators dug deeper into Julio's actions, they discovered a chilling pattern of armed carjackings dating back to October 2021. During this period, Julio had committed numerous carjackings, targeting unsuspecting victims throughout San Antonio. The crimes had escalated over time, displaying an alarming escalation in violence.
According to court records, 20-year-old Julio Cesar Rivera sentenced to 45 years in prison.
Facing mounting evidence against them, Julio pleaded guilty to 3 cases against him in 2023. The plea deal secured a conviction and prevented Julio from appealing his sentence. This meant the judge's decision was final, leaving little room for negotiation or reconsideration.
It was 45 years. I just started crying because it's not just for me, it's for the other victims as well.
During the sentencing phase, Alana had the opportunity to address the court and make her voice heard. She demanded that Julio receive the maximum sentence of 45 years for his crime. Alana explained to the court the pain and trauma she had endured as a result of his actions, emphasizing the need for justice to be served. During Julio's setting hearing, his family pleaded for leniency from the judge. Julio's loved ones argued that Julio had grown up without his mother and had faced numerous challenges throughout his life. They suggested that other people had manipulated Julio into participating in the carjackings. According to his father's partner, Julio had once lived with them but struggled with substance abuse. They had to kick him out of their house on several occasions due to his inability to cope with his addiction. That aspect of Julio's life further complicated the situation and, according to the defense, shed light on the reasons behind his actions.
I appreciate that his parents might think he was put up to it, but these were his choices, these were his decisions, this was his gun.
They presented evidence indicating that Julio had obtained the gun used to shoot Alana, leading to further suspicion that he was responsible for the heinous crime.
Ahead of his sentencing, Rivera apologized directly to Castaneda.
I got a lot of time to sit here and think about what I've done. I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago.
The judge, weighing the evidence presented, opted to sentence Julio to the harshest possible, 45 years behind bars. In an emotional moment, Julio addressed Alana in court, expressing his sorrow and regret. Julio claimed that he prays daily for forgiveness and Alana's good health, seeking redemption for his actions.
Face to face with Rivera again was hard, said Castaneda, who's already endured 3 surgeries, with a 4th to come.
Following the sentencing, Alana shared her thoughts and feelings on social media. She expressed the challenges she faced in the aftermath of facing her shooter in court, acknowledging the emotional toll it took on her. Alana emphasized the importance of her ongoing recovery process and assured her supporters that she was determined to move forward with her life. Julio Cesar Rivera's violent crime left a community stunned, but the next case is equally disturbing. Brendan Deppa, a young man whose brutal attack shocked everyone.
Beating teachers aide Joe Nadich last year for taking his Nintendo away in class, a deputy saying he beat her unconscious.
Joanne Nadich was a valued paraprofessional at Matanzas High School who had gained a reputation for her dedication and commitment to supporting students. However, she became increasingly concerned about Brendan Deppa, a troubled teen known for his aggressive behavior and obsession with gaming. In February 2023, Joanne approached Brendan's teacher to express her concerns about allowing him to participate in the gaming console class. She believed that given his disruptive behavior and lack of focus, he should not be allowed to use the console in the classroom. Brendan became enraged after hearing that he would no longer be allowed to use the console in the classroom. Instead of directing his anger towards his teacher, Brendan turned his wrath on Joanne. In a fit of rage, he stood up and got into Joanne's face, spitting on her. Determined to escape the situation, Joanne attempted to leave the classroom. However, Brendan refused to back down, pushing her to the ground. As Joanne lay defenseless on the ground, Brendan continued his assault, raining down blows and kicks upon her. Fortunately, the assault was interrupted by several bystanders who managed to pull Brendan away from Joanne.
Friends are raising money for Joan in a GoFundMe. You can see more than $40,000 has been raised so far.
As the deputies led Brendan away, he continued to threaten Joanne, vowing to kill her. Joanne's injuries were extensive and required immediate medical attention. She was hospitalized, where she was diagnosed with broken ribs, herniated discs, and rotator cuff injuries. In addition to these physical wounds, Joanne also began to experience the impact of the attack on her mental health. Matanzas High School surveillance system captured the entire incident. Footage of Brendan's merciless beating of Joanne quickly spread online, captivating the attention of viewers worldwide. Brendan's time behind bars was not without controversy. He managed to secure his GED while incarcerated. Nevertheless, he also found himself in frequent trouble, accumulating 9 incidents while confined in Flagler County Jail.
He is articulate and thoughtful in his responses to the court. He's been here the entire day without any problems in that regard, participating in these proceedings.
2 years after his arrest, Brendan pleaded no contest to aggravated battery on a school board employee. During the sentencing hearing, Brendan's demeanor was both disturbing and perplexing. Brendan laid his head on the defense table.
Candidate for solely community-based sanctions, at least not at first. Turning to this particular incident.
When the prosecutor spoke, calling Brendan dangerous, Brendan bent over in his seat, keeping his eyes firmly planted on the ground. The judge sentenced Brendan to 5 years in state prison and 15 years probation. Addressing Brendan directly, the judge declared that he had shown no remorse throughout the proceedings.
But for all of his diagnosis and treatment that he needs, that he be evaluated for his prescription medication on a regular basis.
Throughout the hearing, Brendan became increasingly agitated. He repeatedly protested at his attorney and demanded to speak, holding up a sheet of paper twice to emphasize his point. As Brendan left the courthouse, his demeanor seemed to change. Instead of his usual smile and enthusiastic interactions with the press, he gave a disturbing gesture. Brendan flipped off the cameras, sending a chilling message to the media and the world.
First of all, Ashley, I want to thank you for having me on tonight. I really appreciate that. It obviously was not what we were hoping for.
Speaking on his behalf, Brendan's mother expressed her dissatisfaction with the verdict and the sentence. Brendan's mother also claimed that the court was punishing her son because of his race. She alleged that the school district had failed her son by not implementing a proper behavior plan, leading to his aggressive behavior. Instead of prison, she advocated for Brendan to receive treatment, believing that this alternative would better address his issues. Moving from Brendan Deppa's violent outburst, we encounter a case that escalates into even darker territory. A calculated series of murders carried out by 17-year-old Russell Burrell.
He intended to rob them when he and 3 others burst into the General Street apartment and shot the victims. He faces up to 6 consecutive life sentences.
One fateful night, 17-year-old Russell Burrell and 3 of his friends found themselves in an apartment where they hatched a plan to commit burglary. Their target was a man named Michael Martin, whom they believed to be an easy target with potential access to marijuana and money. Their decision to rob Michael would lead to a series of events that would change their lives forever.
Not guilty to all counts, Your Honor.
At approximately 10 p.m., Russell, armed with a fully loaded 9mm Glock pistol equipped with a 17-round magazine and a red laser sight beam, led his friends to Michael Martin's residence. When Michael answered the door, Russell and his companions aggressively commanded him into the living room. Russell's actions escalated rapidly as he and his friends entered the apartment. In the living room, Russell confronted Michael and another man, Damian Colin, who happened to be in the apartment. Without hesitation, Russell opened fire on both men, killing them instantly. As the bullets rained down, Shamika Barrows, who had been asleep on the couch, woke up to the terrifying scene unfolding before her. Realizing that Shamika was also in the apartment, Russell turned his sights on her. In a moment of sheer terror, Shamika watched in disbelief as Russell emptied the remaining clips of his 9mm into her. Shamika died instantly.
At 6, we're learning more about one of those victims' final moments. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us now live outside Providence Superior Court.
It wasn't long after the triple murders that Russell and the 3 other men were caught. Russell Burrell was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder, 3 counts of discharging a firearm during the commission of a crime of violence, and 1 count of conspiracy. Due to the severity of his crimes, Russell faced charges as an adult.
After the group agreed to commit the robbery with the gun, Russell Burrell armed himself with this black 9mm handgun.
After a lengthy legal process, Russell eventually pleaded guilty to all counts. The Attorney General, Peter Kilmartin, described Russell's actions as hard to imagine, considering his age and the absence of remorse. However, Peter Kilmartin emphasized that Russell's actions were not the result of misguided youth, but rather a cold-hearted killer. Russell sat stoic and silent as his sentence was read to him, showing little reaction. The judge described Russell as a cold-blooded, pitiless slayer. Continuing, the judge said, "You became a thing and a hoodlum, and now you're a murderer, a 3-time killer. You deserve absolutely no leniency from this court." After that, the judge dismissed Russell's appeal for leniency. At Russell's sentencing, Peter Kilmartin assured the community that Russell would no longer threaten society. Russell was sentenced to life in prison for each of the first-degree murder charges to be served consecutively. Additionally, he received a life sentence for each of the firearm charges to run concurrently. Russell Burrell's horrific crime was unimaginable, but the next case takes us into even darker territory. Sierra Halseth, a teenager whose chilling act of violence against her own father shook the nation.
They look like young sweethearts just goofing around until this chilling boast.
Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Whoa! Don't put that on the camera. They admit to committing a murder.
Sierra was the youngest child born to Daniel and Elizabeth Halseth. In 2006, Sierra's mother, Elizabeth, became involved in local politics, and several years later, she won a seat in the Nevada State Senate. Eventually, Elizabeth and Daniel separated, and Sierra moved to Alaska with her mother. However, she returned to Nevada and formed a relationship with her father. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic in June 2020, Sierra was in a difficult situation. The teenager refused to return to her mother and stepfather's home, claiming she feared her stepfather. Things quickly escalated, and Sierra defied a court order to run away to her father's house. Sierra's defiance escalated, and her relationship with her father, Daniel, became strained. Daniel, a loving parent, tried his best to support his daughter, but she refused to listen. Despite Daniel's efforts to maintain a positive relationship, Sierra's behavior grew more rebellious and defiant. As time went on, Sierra's behavior took a darker turn. She began associating with an 18-year-old man named Aaron Guerrero. Despite his age, Sierra fell deeply in love with the young man. However, her father, aware of the potential dangers of such an age gap, banned her from having contact with Aaron. With their love for one another burning strong, Sierra and Aaron devised a plan to be together. They decided they could only be together by eliminating Daniel from their lives. On April 8, 2021, they shopped for gloves, bleach, and saws, effectively creating a murder kit. The following morning, when Daniel's mother was unable to contact him, she sent a friend to perform a welfare check on him. Little did she know that this check would uncover the devastating truth. When the friend arrived at Daniel's home, they found the front door unlocked, and upon entering, discovered Daniel's lifeless body. An autopsy would later determine that Daniel had been stabbed over 70 times. When crime scene investigators arrived at the scene, they discovered knives in the kitchen sink and a chainsaw on the living room floor. 4 days after the murder, Sierra and her boyfriend Aaron were tracked down and apprehended in Utah. Upon examining their phones, investigators discovered a video of the two laughing about killing Sierra's father. This chilling footage served as damning evidence against them, confirming their guilt in the minds of investigators. Sierra and Aaron were both arrested and charged with Daniel's murder. During their interrogation, Aaron admitted that he and Sierra had plotted to carry out the murder because Sierra said her father was abusive. However, Daniel's loved ones adamantly denied claims that Daniel had ever mistreated his daughter. In May 2022, Sierra and Aaron pleaded guilty to murder and a slew of other charges related to the murder. During the sentencing hearing, Aaron apologized for his actions, expressing regret for the pain and loss he had caused. However, Sierra remained silent, choosing not to address the heinous crime she had committed. The judge sentenced Sierra and Aaron to 22 years to life in prison. Sierra is serving her sentence at the Florence McClure Women's Correctional Facility in Nevada. Sierra Halseth's chilling role in a brutal murder shocked many, but Samantha Griggs' involvement in a heinous crime is just as disturbing.
Just a year and a half ago, this high school band called Undecided was rocking the summer festival in Ann Arbor. Everything was looking up for them and lead singer Sam Griggs.
Samantha Griggs was an 18-year-old senior at Saline High School in Michigan when she found herself involved in a tragic incident that resulted in the murder of a 19-year-old man. The fateful night began in February 2014 when Samantha, accompanied by two of her friends, Brendan Heim and Tyrell Braderners, drove to East Lansing, Michigan to meet Dustin Froka for a drug deal. However, their true intentions were to rob Dustin. Driven to gain quick money, Samantha agreed to serve as a getaway driver. As the trio approached East Lansing, they encountered Dustin, who willingly entered Samantha's Ford Explorer. Dustin was a student at Michigan State University. He studied marketing, was an up-and-coming rapper, and was the father of a 10-month-old daughter. However, at the time, Dustin was struggling with substance abuse. People who knew Dustin spoke to reporters with the Lansing State Journal and said that despite signing to a record label, he had been on a downward spiral since the fall. Unbeknownst to Dustin, his fate was already sealed when he entered Samantha Griggs' Ford Explorer. During the drive, the two teenage boys in the back seat with Dustin started to beat him, causing multiple skull fractures with brass knuckles. The violence escalated quickly, fueled by anger and greed. To escape, Dustin jumped out of the car, traveling up to 45 to 60 miles per hour. Unfortunately, his desperate attempt to escape ended in tragedy. After the incident, Dustin's lifeless body was discovered along the interstate. The Michigan State Police were called in to investigate, and a search quickly led to the discovery of Samantha, Brendan, and Tyrell, who were arrested and charged with Dustin's murder. Instead of heading off to Eastern Michigan University as she was supposed to after graduation from high school, Samantha was sentenced to between 6 and 15 years in prison after pleading guilty to manslaughter and unarmed robbery charges. During the sentencing hearing, Samantha expressed remorse and apologized for her actions. She tearfully claimed that she had never intended for harm to come to Dustin and that she believed he would only experience a robbery. However, Dustin's stepsister denied these claims, stating that Samantha lacked morals and consciousness. Dustin's stepmother agreed, emphasizing that Samantha had several opportunities to prevent Dustin's murder from happening, but never did. As these statements were made, Samantha nodded in agreement, wiping away tears as she stared at the defense table. Before being convicted of Dustin's murder, Samantha had a clean criminal record, and she was a promising musician with a promising future laid out before her. However, her actions had tragically altered the course of her life forever. Samantha Griggs' case was chilling, but Kenneth Young's story takes us into an even darker side of teenage crime. His involvement in a string of armed robberies shocked everyone, and the courtroom reaction is one you won't forget.
They was like, well, Mr. Young, you're not going home no more, you're gonna die in prison. I'm like, who gonna die? I ain't died in prison. So I was in denial of that because it happened so fast. It's just like, one day I'm 15 years old and I'm in society, then the next I'm out and you telling me I ain't gonna never go home? That's kind of like hard to deal with.
Young was given consecutive life sentences for a crime he committed at the age of 14. Kenneth Young was just 14 years old when he was coerced into joining an armed robbery gang, founded by his mother's substance dealer, who was at the time 24 years old. He had participated in a series of armed robberies with the gang, and one other that was unsuccessful before they were apprehended by police. The prosecutor charged Kenneth Young and the rest of the gang with armed robbery and attempted armed robbery. Young was given consecutive life sentences without the option of parole, despite his young age and the circumstances surrounding the crime he'd committed. Firstly, there was no murder, and secondly, Young participated in these criminal activities alongside adults who should have known better and shouldn't have forced him to participate. Kenneth had also reportedly dissuaded his mother's substance dealer and fellow gang member from committing the crime of rape while they were on a robbery mission. Just as with Joshua Phillips, fortune smiled on Kenneth Young when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Graham v. Florida that it was unconstitutional to sentence a child to life imprisonment without parole for a crime that did not result in the death of any person. A documentary on children in prison, 15 to Life, featured Kenneth Young and his struggle as an adult who went to jail as a child was discussed. The point of the documentary was to educate the world on how the system convicts children, especially colored children, leaving them to grow old and rot in prison. The documentary stressed that children who committed crimes when they were none the wiser should be given a second chance.
Sometimes mama lock me and my sister in a room and she just be gone.
In most cases where a teenager or a child is involved in a criminal act, there is an adult who is either neglectful, indulgent, or abusive. In the case of Kenneth Young, his mother was neglectful. Kenneth Young's mother, a former substance addict, held herself responsible for how her son turned out and expressed that she prayed for forgiveness and hoped that her son can get a second chance. She also said that her son has been very instrumental in her journey towards ending her addiction. When he found out about his sentence, Kenneth says he was in denial because it all happened so fast. Despite being astonished by his lengthy sentence, Young showed remorse for his actions. While Kenneth's mother bears responsibility for her negligence in exposing her son to dangerous influences, our next case plunges us into a chilling scenario involving two students and their unsuspecting Spanish teacher.
And two teenagers accused of killing their Spanish teacher have pled guilty to first-degree murder. The Fairfield High School Spanish teacher was beaten to death in a park with a baseball bat.
When you find the mutilated corpse of an old lady who had been declared missing, your first thoughts would probably never be that the act had been committed by an adolescent. But this was the case for 66-year-old Spanish teacher Barbara Graber. Graber had been brutally murdered by not one but two adolescents, her 16-year-old student Willard Miller and his friend Jeremy Goodale. The reason why is shocking, and the reaction of the perpetrators in court will send shivers down your spine. Willard Miller had been failing his Spanish class at Fairfield High School in Iowa, and his poor grades threatened his chances of going on a study trip overseas, so he frequently argued with his teacher, Barbara Graber, over it. Miller got fed up with not having his way and devised an evil plan to take her out. His plan was to ambush her along a path where she often walked, and he would employ the services of his friend Jeremy Goodale to act as a lookout. On the 2nd of November 2021, Miller finally got the chance to act on his plan when Graber was walking along the planned path. He and Goodale were able to blindside her before repeatedly striking her with a baseball bat until she passed away. Graber obviously couldn't survive the attack, so both boys dragged her corpse into a nearby park and hid it beneath a tarp before fleeing the scene in her van, which they abandoned at the end of a rural road. Both Miller and Goodale soon became the focus of the murder investigation after Goodale sent incriminating messages to another school friend on the social media app Snapchat. Goodale's friend quickly showed the evidence to the police, who sought search warrants for the homes and mobile devices of both perpetrators of the murder. It was reported that Miller had also given hints about the murder to multiple classmates, telling one that Graber might disappear before the murder, and telling another that he had caught someone with a baseball bat the day after the murder. Graber's body was discovered the following day, covered by a tarp and wheelbarrow following tip-offs, which the police had received, including from the classmates of Miller and Goodale. Both boys were eventually arrested and brought in for questioning. Goodale and Miller initially denied their involvements, but eventually spilled the beans, although they both tried to make it seem that they had less involvement in the murder than the other. Ultimately, the evidence was stacked against them, and they were eventually charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit a forcible felony. On the 18th of April, 2023, both Goodale and Miller pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and were to be charged as adults due to the severity of the crime. Fortunately for both boys, Iowa does not permit juvenile crimes to be punished with a life sentence without the possibility of parole, but they knew they were going away for a long time. In July 2023, Miller was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 35 years before he's eligible for parole, which is 5 more years than was recommended by the prosecutors under a plea agreement. In November that year, Goodale, who had testified against Miller, received a recommended jail sentence of 25 years for his role in the murder. He and Miller were also ordered to pay $150,000 in restitution to Graber's family.
Got a nosebleed in court just as he's about to learn his fate. Jeremy Goodale pled guilty for his role in the crime that shocked America.
Numerous members of Graber's extended family showed up in court to express their pain and anger over the incident and the trauma it had caused the family ever since. They blamed Goodale for the murder as he chose not to prevent it, but some did offer words of encouragement. Goodale made a tearful apology to the family and friends of his victim, claiming that it was the worst decision of his life and that he wished he could go back in time to prevent it from ever happening.
2 years ago, I made the worst decision of my life, and I take full responsibility for what I did. And today, as a young man, I can begin to pay for that. I can never give back what I've taken.
He also apologized to the investigators for trying to mislead them during the interrogations, where he accused a gang of masked kids of perpetrating the murder and making him have to conceal the evidence. Miller, who is now 19, is currently in state custody at the Iowa Department of Corrections, while Goodale is being held at the Jefferson County Detention Center. Willard Miller and Jeremy Goodale's tragic action shocked everyone, but the next case is just as horrifying. Demetrius Pogortzis, a young man whose violent rampage at his school left a community shattered.
Citizen of the United States? Yes, sir. Are you requesting consideration for a court-appointed attorney?
Yes, sir.
Are you out on bond for any other charge?
No, sir.
The depraved actions of 17-year-old Demetrius Pogortzis over a 25-minute period at the Santa Fe High School in Santa Fe, Texas, on the 18th of May, 2018, which left 10 people dead, would shock the entire United States, and his reaction when faced with the court would baffle observers. The story of Demetrius Pogortzis' actions began on the 2nd of March, 2018, 2 months before it actually happened. On that day, Pogortzis, born on the 12th of October 2000, logged on to an arms purchasing website and purchased 50 rounds of .38 special ammunition, as well as 105 rounds of 12-gauge shotgun ammunition. 2 weeks later, on March 13th, 2018, Pogortzis ordered an additional round of shotgun ammunition and paid using an American Express gift card, using his real name and address for shipment but not specifying his age. Pogortzis was on the honor roll at his school and played on the school football team. However, he was regarded as quiet and was reportedly often bullied by fellow students and even coaches of the football team. This suggests that he may have been plotting his revenge with the purchase of those guns. Pogortzis would finally get his chance to strike in the early morning of May 18, 2018, when he suddenly began firing his weapon into an art class of unexpecting students at the school's art complex. As he began shooting, a staff member pulled a fire alarm which caused most of the school to evacuate, but those in the art classroom weren't so lucky. Pogortzis went on a manic spree, walking into one of the classrooms and shooting at a victim while singing a popular Queen song, Another One Bites the Dust, in between shots, then proceeding to shoot through the storage closet, where most of the art students had run to hide themselves in, with a shotgun. Pogortzis then briefly left the art room, which caused students to leave the closet and attempt to barricade the art room door. However, he returned and pushed the door open, and upon spotting a student he knew, he exclaimed, "Surprise!" and shot the student in the chest. Pogortzas' shooting spree would continue for 25 minutes until Santa Fe ISD police officers arrived at the scene to confront him. Rather than surrender, he exchanged fire with the police officers and critically wounded one of them. Pogortzas continued to fire rounds randomly and even threatened to shoot more officers, which forced them to retaliate, injuring him in the process. He would eventually be arrested following his surrender due to the injury, and was detained as the police evacuated other students and staff from the art complex. At the end of his shooting exercise, Pogortzas had claimed the lives of 10 people, including 8 students and 2 teachers, as well as injuring a further 13 individuals. This makes the shooting the 8th deadliest school shooting in United States history. Following Pogortzas' arrest, various types of explosive devices and a Molotov cocktail were found in and around the school. During the investigations, a note from Pogortzas' journal suggests that not only did he want to commit the shooting, but he also wanted to commit suicide after the shooting, and had even planned on committing the act for some time. Pogortzas was handed 11 federal charges for the capital murder of 10 people and the aggravated assault against a public servant, and was held in custody without bail. If convicted, he faced a maximum sentence of 40 years to life, but due to his age, he was ineligible for the death penalty or a life sentence without parole. In June 2019, it was announced that the state trial for Pogortzas would take place in Richmond in January 2020. However, 4 months later, on the 4th of November 2019, he was found by 3 experts to be unfit to stand trial. On the 11th of February 2022, following a long mental health treatment while in custody at North Texas State Hospital, Pogortzas was again found incompetent to stand trial and was ordered to stay in the mental hospital for another 12 months. Pogortzas made an appearance in court in February 2019, where his attorney made a request for a change of venue, due to the publicity which the case had received. During the hearing, Pogortzas showed no emotions and stayed silent through the trial.
Demetrius Pogortzas turned 19 while awaiting his first in-person court appearance since last May's massacre inside Santa Fe High School.
His apparent lack of remorse was called out by a mother of one of the victims.
To see if I could see some remorse, and I didn't get it.
In a published statement, Pogortzas' family extended their condolences to the victims and thanked first responders for their assistance, while also admitting they were as shocked by the event as everyone else. The parents of 2 of the victims filed lawsuits against Pogortzas' parents with claims that his father didn't properly secure the murder weapons, which were revealed to belong to him, and that the parents were negligent in entrusting their son with the firearms. The trial is set for July 2024. Pogortzas, now 23, is currently in solitary confinement and is receiving treatment as he awaits the declaration of yet another court date to find out how long he's going to be incarcerated for. But Pogortzas isn't alone in this dark chapter of youth violence. Enter Gabe Parker.
16-year-old Gabriel Parker is accused of shooting and killing 2 of his classmates and injuring 14 others in the shooting back in January.
In the morning of January 23, 2018, as students of the Marshall County High School in Kentucky got ready for the start of classes, 15-year-old student Gabe Parker opened fire in an open area at the school, murdering 2 students and injuring 14 others. After he was caught, he was made to face the consequences of his actions, and his behavior in the court shocked everyone. Gabriel Ross Parker was born on the 3rd of March 2002 and grew up in a broken home, which culminated in his mother getting remarried to his stepfather. Despite this, he showed no true signs at home of being capable of violence, but sometimes the propensity to commit murder stays well hidden until the act is perpetrated. On the 23rd of January 2018, students of Parker's high school were gathering in the commons prior to the start of class, blissfully unaware of what was about to befall them. The then 15-year-old sophomore, Parker had gone to school that day with a Ruger handgun and an intent to commit murder. Parker had reportedly gone to the school's band room earlier to check with his friends before the shooting, to make sure they were not in the area before returning to begin his attack. Just before 8 a.m., Parker brought out his handgun in the commons area and emotionlessly opened fire at the unsuspecting students. In the process of fleeing, multiple students were struck by bullets while others were trampled on in the ensuing stampede. 2 of the students, Bailey Nicole Holt and Preston Ryan Cope, who were both 15 years old, succumbed to their gunshot wounds, while 18 others, including 5 girls and 13 boys. After the shooting, Parker discarded his weapon and ran to the weight room to hide with other students, who had been unaware he was the shooter and motioned for him to join them in hiding. However, one of the students who was hiding in the location recognized him as the shooter and alerted a teacher in the room about his identity. The teacher then called law enforcement. The Marshall County Sheriff from the Marshall County Sheriff's Department arrived a few minutes later and located Parker and arrested him shortly after. Following his arrest, Parker's bag was searched by police, and inside was a copy of the Communist Manifesto and a large Winchester sheath knife. Meanwhile, he had been brought in for interrogation to get to the root of his actions. During the interrogation, Parker expressed that he was an atheist and revealed his disillusioned views of life. Parker also indicated the shooting was an experiment to see how students and society would respond. Parker was eventually arraigned in Marshall County Circuit Court on the 16th of February, 2018 on charges of 2 counts of murder and 4 counts of first-degree assault, and he was to be tried as an adult due to the gravity of his crimes. Due to his age, Parker was ineligible for either the death penalty or life without parole, and according to Kentucky law, he also had to be eligible for parole after serving 25 years. He would plead guilty to the charges at a hearing on the 28th of April, 2020 in exchange for a plea bargain. As part of the plea offer, 6 of the assault charges were amended to assault in the second degree, Class C felonies. On the 12th of June 2020, an 18-year-old Gabe Parker was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 70 years, with the eligibility for parole after serving 20 years. After his sentence was read out, Parker showed no emotion and merely nodded to the announcement and let his attorney speak for him.
18-year-old inmate pled guilty to all 16 charges, including 2 counts of murder for the deaths of Bailey Holt and Preston Cope.
Some victims of the shooting recounted the horrific incident and the trauma it had caused them, while the parents of the victims were expectedly infuriated while recollecting their experience and agreed that Parker deserved the life sentence, even if some did admit that they were open to forgiving him in the future.
You're a sorry, low-life demon, piece of garbage, and I can't stand the sight of you, and you will never see the light of day again, and for that I'm grateful.
A civil lawsuit was filed against Parker's parents in 2019 by the parents of 4 of the victims of the shooting, including the 2 who sadly lost their lives. They were reportedly asked to be awarded $36.7 million in compensation, although that wouldn't be enough to bring back their kids. Parker, who is now 22 years old, is currently imprisoned at the North Point Training Center in Danville, Kentucky, and will be eligible for parole in June 2040 at the age of 38. Just when you think the horror ends there, enter Ethan Crumbly and his parents.
I am a really bad person. I have done terrible things that no one should ever do. I have lied, been not trustworthy. I've hurt many people, and that's what I've done.
On the 30th of November 2021, a 15-year-old Ethan Crumbly turned up at his high school in Oxford Township, Michigan, armed with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun and a strong will to kill. Around lunchtime, he would finally get his wish as he appeared from the school bathroom, then began to shoot at anyone he could see. The teenager would end up murdering 4 students and injuring 7 people more. Ethan Crumbly was born in Atlantic Beach, Florida on the 28th of April 2006 to parents Jennifer and James, both of whom had prior minor criminal records from 1995 to 2005 for DUI and check fraud. He reportedly had a troubled childhood, with his parents often abandoning him at home, which led to him being introverted, having few friends, and often exhibiting weird behaviors. Crumbly also reportedly videotaped himself torturing animals, once allegedly keeping a baby bird's head in a jar and placing it in the school bathroom. He also frequently talked about battling with demons. Despite his obvious troubles, his parents allegedly never sought therapy for him, and those problems would ultimately lead to the events of 30th November 2021. On that fateful day, Ethan Crumbly went to his Oxford High School with the intent to shoot it up. He had already hidden his semi-automatic gun away in the school the day prior, a gun his father had bought him just the previous Friday. Some school officials had raised suspicions of Ethan to his parents that very day due to his actions, which included searching for ammunition online and making sketches of himself committing a school shooting. However, this was not properly handled, and they would realize in the worst possible way. At around 12:51 p.m. on November 30th, 2021, Crumbly was spotted coming out of the school bathroom with his gun, which he had probably hidden in there. Immediately afterwards, he started firing sporadically in the hallway with hundreds of students passing through. When they began to flee, he slowly walked down the hallway and began shooting into classrooms and at anyone who was unable to escape before moving on to the next classroom. An intercom voiceover alerted students and teachers to an active shooter, and the teachers began locking and barricading doors and also covering windows. Due to the quick response by students and staff of the school, Crumbly was unable to actually enter any of the classrooms. Nevertheless, some students and staff weren't so lucky, as Crumbly had already claimed some victims. 3 students, 17-year-old Madison Baldwin, 16-year-old Tate Meyer, and 14-year-old Hannah St. Juliana were killed at the scene, and 8 other people, including a teacher, were injured. One of the injured students, 17-year-old Justin Schilling, would succumb to his injuries in hospital the following day. Law enforcement arrived at the scene only 3 minutes after the attack started, following a 911 call, and promptly arrested Crumbly, who still had 7 rounds of ammunition loaded into his gun and 2 15-round magazines, and took him in for questioning as investigations commenced. Crumbly's cell phone was revealed to contain 2 videos, both filmed the night before the incident, where he talked about his plans to shoot and kill students at the school the following day. He also had a journal where he reportedly detailed his desire to shoot up the school in a bid to get US President Biden impeached. Crumbly's parents had been at the school earlier that day following the reports of their son's behavior, and decided against taking him home despite being fully aware that he was in the possession of an unlocked gun. Following the investigations, Ethan was charged as an adult with terrorism resulting in death, 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, as well as 12 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. He would plead guilty to these charges at a hearing in October 2022. On the 3rd of December 2021, a prosecutor announced that both of Crumbly's parents were being charged with 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter for their failure to secure the gun he used during the shootings. On getting this information, his parents would bizarrely decide to flee the town and miss their first arraignment date before they were eventually caught, arrested, and charged the following day. On the 9th of December 2023, Crumbly was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole in what was a tense courtroom. Right before the sentencing, a remorseful Crumbly apologized to the courtroom and stated that he would accept whatever punishment was handed to him and aimed to do better. He even attempted to forgive his parents for their role in the murder.
Whatever sentence it is, I do plan to be better than I am. I don't know if you'll believe that, but records of 15, 20, 25 years can show that I will change.
The trial for Crumbly's parents was completed by the 14th of March 2024, with his dad and mom being sentenced to 10 years and 15 years in prison, respectively. During the sentencing hearing, parents of the victims vehemently blamed Crumbly's parents for neglecting their responsibilities, which was what ultimately led to the deaths of their children. Crumbly's actions led to a series of copycat school shooting threats, which resulted in over 500 schools in Michigan and 6 other states being closed. Today, he is held at the Oaks Correctional Facility in Manistee, Michigan, as he has turned 18. His mother, Jennifer, is currently imprisoned in the Women's Huron Valley Correctional Facility, and his father, James, is in the Bellamy Creek Correctional Facility. Ethan and his parents may have set a precedent, but our next case centers on an 8-year-old girl and a baseball bat.
Tonight, the sister of this 8-year-old girl killed by her then teenage neighbor in one of Jacksonville's biggest murder cases. Well, her sister says she is sick, thinking that her sister's killer could possibly walk free one day.
Murder is not a crime that one would expect from a child, gruesome murder especially, and that is why to this day it is both shocking and sad to hear the story of Joshua Phillips. It was a day like any other in Duval County until it wasn't. An 8-year-old girl, Maddie Clifton, was mistakenly hit by a baseball and would not stop crying. Her cries scared 14-year-old neighbor Joshua Phillips, with whom she had been playing, and in fear that her crying would attract the attention of people around and get him in trouble with his father, who was reportedly mistreating him and would punish him for having friends in the house, the young teenager did the unimaginable. What Joshua Phillips did to avoid getting into trouble with his father will go down in history as one of the most brutal crimes committed in Jacksonville, Florida. In November 1998, the entire neighborhood and the police set out to search for its young member. Everyone, including Joshua Phillips' mother, began handing out flyers of the missing child to people, asking if they'd seen her. While the search party was still out there looking for the little girl, Joshua Phillips' mother made a shocking, gory discovery. Under her teenage son's waterbed was the lifeless body of the missing Maddie Clifton. It turns out that Joshua Phillips had, in a bid to stop Maddie from crying, dragged her into the house he lived in with his parents, hit her repeatedly with a baseball bat until he thought she was dead. When he finished, he then hid her body under his waterbed. His dad returned from work and Joshua was terrified to discover that Maddie was still breathing and moaning. He then stabbed her multiple times until she died. It wasn't until a week after Joshua had killed Maddie that Joshua's mother found the missing body and alerted the authorities. The murder of that little girl was traumatizing for everyone involved. Both the families of the girl who was murdered and the teenager who had committed the crime were distraught. The court initially sentenced Phillips to life imprisonment without parole. But in 2005, the Supreme Court ruled that it is unconstitutional to sentence a child to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. State laws required that another hearing be conducted after 25 years to reassess the situation and see whether or not a person who is convicted as a child is fit to rejoin society. This is required for all juvenile convictions involving death.
It eroded our marriage, replaced love with grief, deep sadness, and a pain that no family should ever have to bear.
At the resentencing, the family of the deceased, her mother, father, and sister all came to testify against Phillips.
Why should the defendant be allowed to live normally while Maddie lies in cold in a grave?
The state of Phillips' mind is not certain as he watches the court proceeding, blinking repeatedly, his face expressionless. The late Maddie's mother then goes on to say that if her daughter's murderer was ever released from jail, she hoped she'd no longer be on Earth. Reports held that Phillips has been of good behavior in prison, has won multiple awards, and became a Buddhist monk. He also hopes to live in a monastery for the rest of his life if he gets out of jail. Reports also confirmed that Phillips is indeed sorry for his actions. The family of the deceased did not appear to care about that as they insisted that their daughter and sister's murderer should not be allowed to live freely, stating that Joshua hadn't just deprived their daughter of her right to live and them of the joy of watching her grow, but also that her death had put a strain on their marriage. Despite the evidence of good behavior on Josh's part, the judge upheld the original sentence of the court. Joshua will remain in jail for the rest of his life. Joshua Phillips' brutal crime shocked the world, but the next case is just as disturbing. Savon Schmuss, a young man whose violent actions left a trail of devastation.
I was nominated by my boyfriend.
McKenna Hilton had goals in life. She wanted to work in medical therapy or be a nurse. But before her dreams could come true, the 18-year-old was murdered.
On August 18, 2016, a tragic incident occurred in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Savon Schmuss, a 16-year-old boy, took the life of his 18-year-old half-sister, McKenna Hilton, in a shocking act of violence. Savon strangled his half-sister inside their father's apartment. He then placed her body inside her vehicle and drove it to the other side of the township, where he dumped it. A few hours later, a person walking their dog stumbled upon McKenna's lifeless body and reported it to the authorities. The police were immediately notified, and an investigation was launched.
Who her family says she loved. Savon Schmuss, now 17, was 16 when the crime happened. He was mom when given the chance to speak in court.
During one of Savon's court appearances, the Kent County Assistant Prosecutor, Vicky Sells, asked the judge to deny bail. Savon's father, David Schmuss, who was in the courtroom, yelled encouraging words to his son as the bailiffs led him away. Further investigation revealed that in 2010, David Schmuss pleaded guilty to taking a photo of McKenna, who was only 12 years old at the time, while she was showering. David Schmuss faced 15 years in prison because he had previous convictions for drug and illegal gun possession. Savon, who was 10 at the time, wrote a letter to the judge asking for leniency in his father's case. In the end, David accepted a plea deal.
What he did was so heinous, it was premeditated, it was so hateful, so evil. He doesn't deserve a second chance.
Savon Schmuss pleaded guilty to the murder of his sister McKenna in 2017. During the sentencing hearing, McKenna's mother, Stacy Hilton, delivered a powerful victim impact statement to Savon. Stacy voiced her hatred for Savon, stating that she would never forgive him for taking her daughter's life. She expressed her hope that Savon will be in a body bag when he leaves prison.
Doesn't get one, we don't get one. He doesn't deserve one.
After losing her daughter, this is among the only ways she has to show her love. Graveside.
Despite Savon expressing remorse for his actions through his attorney, Stacy expressed skepticism, stating that she did not believe his apologies. She went on to describe the pain of losing her precious daughter, saying that McKenna's absence had left an irreplaceable void in her life. Savon's father, David Schmuss, read a Bible verse about the endurance of love. The sentencing ended with Savon being sentenced to 40 to 100 years in prison. As the sentence was read, Savon's father wept openly. However, Savon himself remained silent. As we continue into the disturbing world of teen killers, we reach the chilling case of Craig Price. the youngest serial killer in U.S. history.
Through a patchwork of charges for incidents in prison, prosecutors have so far been successful. But a Target 12 investigation revealed Price was able to shave his sentence down by more than 4 years for earning Joan Heaton and her 2 daughters, 10-year-old Jennifer and 8-year-old Melissa, in 1989.
On July 27, 1987, 13-year-old Craig Price committed his first murder when he broke into his neighbor Rebecca Spencer's home and stabbed the young woman over 50 times. This brutal act marked the beginning of a dark chapter in his life. 2 years later, when Craig Price was 15 and a freshman in high school, he decided it was time to kill again. In September 1989, fueled by LSD and marijuana, he broke into 39-year-old Joan Heaton's home and murdered her and her 2 daughters, Jennifer and Melissa. All 3 victims were mercilessly stabbed, and Craig's brutality was reflected in the fact that he broke off the handles of the knives he used, leaving the blades embedded in the bodies. Suspicion quickly fell on Craig Price as the suspect behind these heinous crimes. The police knew that their killer had injured himself during the frenzied attack, and Craig had a suspicious gash on his finger. When the police searched Craig's home, they were horrified to find knives in his backyard shed that matched the kinds used in the killings of his neighbors Rebecca Spencer, Joan, Jennifer, and Melissa Heaton. At the station, Craig Price gave a chilling confession to stabbing all 4 victims. However, what shocked everyone even more was the way he delivered this confession. Despite his young age, Craig remained eerily calm, spoke nonchalantly, and even imitated the sounds of little Jennifer and Melissa as they died.
39-year-old Joan Heaton and her 2 children, 10-year-old Jennifer and 8-year-old Melissa, were discovered inside their home, stabbed to death.
The news that Craig Price was the killer stunned the residents of Warwick, Rhode Island. How could a seemingly harmless and friendly boy commit such heinous crimes? Craig was only 16 years old at the time of his arrest, which left many questioning how someone so young could be capable of such atrocities.
Craig, I want you in your own words at this time. Tell me as clearly and as best you can what occurred there.
Price told detectives he snuck through an open window in the Heaton's home in the dead of night.
Craig was sentenced to be released from the Youth Correctional Center when he turned 21. This, unfortunately, was the maximum penalty allowed under the Rhode Island law. When Craig was sentenced to serve only 5 years in prison for these heinous crimes, it sparked a firestorm of anger and disbelief. The families of his victims, as well as the general public, were outraged at the leniency of his sentence. The thought that such a dangerous individual would be allowed to roam free after only 5 years was deeply unsettling. In response to the public outcry, a group of concerned citizens banded together to form the Citizens Opposed to the Release of Price, or CORE organization. Their mission was simple: to keep Craig behind bars and ensure that he would never again pose a threat to society.
Is accused of stabbing another inmate at a Florida prison. It could cause him to stay behind bars for a long time.
One key objective for CORP was to increase public awareness about Craig's crimes. To this end, they organized various campaigns, including public rallies, pamphlet distribution, and media coverage. Their goal was to ensure that no one would ever be caught off guard again. In addition to raising awareness, CORP also dedicated its efforts to lobbying for tougher laws that would prevent Craig's release. They collaborated with lawmakers and policymakers to push for critical bills that would enhance public safety and ensure that dangerous offenders like Craig remained behind bars. When President Clinton visited Providence, Rhode Island in 1994, an airplane carrying a banner that read, "Alert, Killer of 4 Craig Price moving here," caught his attention. The president expressed his dismay that Craig could be released in approximately 6 months despite the seriousness of his crimes. This incident brought further attention to the issue and solidified the public's support for keeping Craig behind bars.
Price has had 43 infractions in prison, including some that have increased his sentence. This is an evidence photo of an ACI correctional officer who officials say Price attacked in 1998.
On June 8, 1994, Craig Price was indicted on a charge of assault and extortion after he threatened to injure an officer at the juvenile correctional facility he was housed in. During Craig's trial, the prosecution cross-examined him, which triggered a violent outburst. Craig displayed his true colors, revealing his true nature. As a result, he was found guilty and received an additional 25 years on top of his original sentence.
The notorious Rhode Island serial killer leaving his prison cell and dragging a wheelchair he used. Investigators say he was supposed to be on the way to the showers himself, but had a more sinister plot.
Citizens of Rhode Island heaved a sigh of relief as more time was added to Craig Price's sentence, ensuring he would never be released back into society. Craig was transferred to the Florida Department of Corrections as part of a routine interstate transfer. In April of 2017, Craig was accused of stabbing an inmate in Live Oak, Florida, with a 5-inch homemade blade. This incident marked another dark chapter in Craig's life, as he was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the crime. Next, we will explore the world of 5 teens who recklessly threw a rock through a car window.
17-year-old Kyle Anger, 16-year-olds Mark Silkeski and McCaden Payne, 15-year-olds Alexander Miller and Trevor Gray.
In Genesee County, Michigan, 17-year-old Kyle Anger, 16-year-old Mark Sikelski, 16-year-old McCaden Payne, 15-year-old Trevor Gray, and 15-year-old Alexander Miller were charged with second-degree murder after a man was killed by a rock thrown by Kyle Anger off an interstate overpass.
Cops say they were throwing rocks onto Interstate 75 as a prank. 4 vehicles were reportedly damaged, and police say one of the rocks went through a windshield.
According to reports, the 5 teens were involved in reckless and destructive behavior, causing damage to many cars as they tossed rocks off the overpass. One particular rock weighed at least 20 pounds. This incident occurred when Kyle Anger aimed the rock at the windshield of the van 32-year-old Kenneth White was driving. With unimaginable force, the rock crashed through the windshield, hitting Kenneth in the chest and neck and causing massive blunt force trauma. Kenneth's life was tragically cut short, leaving his family and loved ones devastated. The impact of his actions was felt throughout the community, sparking outrage and demanding justice. Genesee County Sheriff Robert Pickles stated after the incident, condemning the teenager's actions and emphasizing that this was not a prank, but rather a second-degree murder. The 5 teens were arrested and faced serious consequences of their actions.
15-year-old Trevor Gray and 16-year-old Mark Sikelski. Their tearful family sat in the courtroom in sadness and disbelief. Their sons are facing the possibility of life in prison.
The impact of this tragedy reached far beyond the courtroom. Amy Cable, the fiancée of Kenneth and the mother of his young son, shared her heartfelt feelings of anger and grief with the world. She expressed her anger that such a stupid act had taken away the love of her life and the father of her child. Initially, the decision was that these killers would be tried as adults. However, nearly 4 years later, an appeals court reversed the judge's decision and returned the case to the juvenile system. Mark Sikelski, Trevor Gray, and McCaden Payne pleaded guilty to manslaughter and were sentenced to no additional jail time, as they had already served a total of 1,317 days. Alexander Miller, the 4th killer, pleaded guilty and served 330 days as part of a plea agreement. Kyle Anger, the only one of the 5 teens to be charged as an adult in the case, was released on parole in January 2021. Kenneth White's family found out about the plea agreement hearing for Kenneth's teenage killers the day before, so many of them were unable to attend. To Kenneth White's father, he would have rather seen his son's murderers face a 10-year sentence. However, no matter what, Kenneth White Sr. conceded he wasn't going to get his son back, no matter how much time the killers faced.
Kenneth White, the father of a young son, was struck in the chest and face while riding in the passenger seat of a pickup truck on the way home from work and died of blunt force trauma.
From disbelief to remorse, each response showcased the complexity of the human psyche. It was evident that these teenagers were grappling with the consequences of their actions and seeking some form of redemption. The video serves as a powerful reminder of the consequences of our actions and the importance of making responsible choices. Now we turn to an even more chilling case. Join us as we uncover the tragic story of Eric Smith, who took the life of a 4-year-old boy.
Bright red hair and freckles made him a target at school for years, and as a teenager he was seen peddling around town for hours on end alone.
On August 2, 1993, in upstate New York, 13-year-old Eric Smith made a tragic choice that would change his life forever. While riding his bike to camp, he encountered a 4-year-old boy named Derek Roby, who was also going to the same camp. Without hesitation, Eric lured Derek into an isolated wooded area. Once secluded from prying eyes, Eric proceeded to strangle Derek, drop a large rock on his head, and sodomize him with a stick. The brutality of this act was unimaginable, even for the most hardened criminals. To add insult to injury, Eric reached into Derek's lunchbox, pulled out a Kool-Aid packet, and poured it into Derek's wounds. At 11 a.m., Derek's mother arrived at the camp to pick up her son, only to find him missing. Panic set in as she realized that her son never made it there. A full-scale search was launched, with authorities desperately seeking clues and any information about Derek's whereabouts. 4 hours later, the search party stumbled upon a horrific sight: Derek's lifeless body. Derek's cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma and asphyxia. The entire community was engulfed in grief and outrage. About 1 week later, Eric Smith broke the silence and confessed to his mother that he had committed the heinous crime. Eric's mother, horrified by her son's actions, immediately informed the police. Given the ages of both Eric and Derek, the murder became a headline-grabbing story, captivating the attention of the nation. As the media coverage intensified, Eric's face became synonymous with pure evil. Despite barely being a teenager, Eric was charged as an adult for his heinous crime. The prosecution and defense conducted extensive medical tests on Eric, hoping to find any indicators that might shed light on his alleged violent tendencies. However, despite the thorough examinations, the results showed nothing unusual. It perplexed the prosecution and defense teams, leaving more questions than answers. During Eric's trial in 1994, the defense psychiatrist presented alarming evidence that they claimed to have diagnosed Eric with intermittent explosive disorder. This condition is characterized by sudden, uncontrollable outbursts of rage, often resulting in violent behavior. However, the prosecution called an expert who testified that this disorder is rarely seen in children Eric's age. The conflicting testimony further fueled speculation about Eric's mental state and whether he was truly capable of such heinous acts. After weeks of intense deliberation, the jury finally reached a verdict on August 16, 1994. Eric was found guilty of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 9 years to life in prison, the maximum sentence allowed for juvenile offenders at that time. In a letter addressed to Derek's parents, Eric expressed deep remorse for his actions. He wrote if he could go back in time, he would switch places with Derek and endure all the pain he had caused.
It was directed at all the other guys who used to pick on me. And when I was torturing and killing Derek, that was what I saw in my head.
For the next 27 years, Eric was denied parole multiple times. In October 2021, Eric's luck began to change. He was granted parole, sparking widespread outrage and disbelief among the citizens of the small upstate New York town where Derek was murdered. During the parole hearing, Eric shocked everyone by revealing that he had been engaged to an attorney since 2019. In February 2022, Eric Smith's release became official. After serving 27 years in prison, he was finally set free. However, the news of his impending release was met with resistance by the small-town citizens. Determined to make their voices heard, they held peaceful protests to let Eric know they did not want to see him back in their community. The outrage and concern were palpable as residents expressed their fears and unease about the impending release of someone who had committed such heinous crimes. Doreen Roby, Derek's mother, faced the harsh reality of her son's killer being set free. Despite her pain, Doreen vowed to shield herself from further torment. She explained that she doesn't allow Eric Smith to take up space in her head, as she doesn't care where he is or what he's doing as long as he remains distant from her friends and family. Today, Eric Smith is a free man living in New York City's Queens neighborhood. Despite his controversial release, he has avoided the spotlight and maintained a low profile. However, the scars left by his actions remain etched in the hearts of the victims and their families. While Eric Smith walks free, Alyssa Bustamante faces 30 years in prison for her heinous crime.
A pocket knife, a kitchen knife. Kitchen knife. Okay. Where's that kitchen knife now? The same.
On October 21, 2009, 9-year-old Elizabeth Olton disappeared from her home and was never seen alive again. 2 days later, her body was in a wooded area near her home. Her throat had been slit and she had been stabbed and strangled to death. The police revealed that a juvenile had been caught and arrested for the murder of the 9-year-old. Later, the truth was revealed, and the perpetrator? 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante. Alyssa and her 3 siblings started living with their grandparents in the same area as the Oltons in 2002. Their grandparents got custody of Alyssa and her siblings when their mother had addiction issues, and their father was serving time in prison. Alyssa began to change around 2007 when she was admitted to the hospital after a failed suicide attempt. From that time, nothing was ever the same. Alyssa's behavior changed drastically, and it reflected everywhere, especially on the internet. Alyssa had listed cutting as one of her hobbies on her YouTube profile. She also posted a disturbing picture of herself where she held 2 fingers to her head, pretending to shoot herself. On the day of the murder, Alyssa planned to kill Olton for the fun of it. Alyssa convinced her younger sister to bring Olton to the forest near their home under the assumption that they were going to hang out. After her sister went to Elizabeth, who lived 4 houses away from them, Alyssa waited in the woods for Elizabeth to arrive. Her younger sister was gone before Elizabeth came. When she arrived, Alyssa strangled Elizabeth, slit her throat, and stabbed her 8 times in the chest. After she murdered her, Alyssa buried Elizabeth's body in a grave she had dug 5 days before. After Alyssa returned home, she wrote something disturbing in her journal that led to her conviction. She attempted to scribble the note out after, but it was too late. She wrote, "I just killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat and stabbed them. Now they're dead. I don't know how to feel at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the 'oh my god, I can't do this' feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kinda nervous and shaky right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now, LOL." She attended a church dance after. When this note was revealed to the public, many were horrified to find that a 15-year-old had written it. Alyssa was arrested and first brought to court in November 2009. She pleaded not guilty, but was indicted on first-degree murder and armed criminal action charges.
Basically, the main reason for accepting the offer was to avoid the absolute certainty of life without parole. If there was another option, then there would have been no reason to have accepted that offer.
Eventually, she took a plea deal in 2012 and the charges were lessened to second-degree murder. She showed no remorse, and it was clear that she only did it to make sure she didn't spend life in prison. Alyssa was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of conditional release and 30 years for armed criminal action. Where Alyssa killed Elizabeth for the fun of it, the same cannot be said for Christine Paolilla, who killed multiple people because of a failed robbery.
I had made the gun go off, not purposely though, but like it went to the back of the room because I was like screaming, just like shaking.
So somehow you pulled the trigger?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Christine Paolilla, and she just confessed to a mass murder that had happened 3 years prior. In this clip, she is a nervous wreck, but is not always so. Christine had done well after years of ridicule and bullying. Paolilla was diagnosed with alopecia in kindergarten, and this caused her to lose her hair, eyebrows, and eyelashes. She had to wear wigs because of hair loss. She also had poor vision and wore thick glasses. All of this contributed to her being bullied by her classmates. Paolilla lost self-confidence, and it was not until 2003 that things began to improve.
Christine came home one day, very happy. She said, "Mom," she said, "I made 2 new friends who are the sweetest girls I've ever met." I said, "Who are they?" She said, "Oh, Rachel and Tiffany."
Christine enrolled at Clear Lake High School in Houston, where she met Rachel Coloradis and Tiffany Rowell. Rachel and Tiffany were the school's popular girls and helped her change her appearance and fit in with the rest of the school. This greatly helped, and Christine became popular among the students. Her friendship with Tiffany and Rachel turned things around so much that she was voted Miss Irresistible by her school's student body. But her good streak wouldn't last long because it was that year that she started dating 21-year-old Christopher Lee Snyder. Christine was only 17 when this illegal relationship started. Christine's relationship caused her parents concern because Snyder was a drug addict and had a lengthy criminal record. Her parents disapproved because they felt that Paolilla would be influenced. She was. She began to use drugs and develop anger issues. On July 18, 2003, things would take a turn for the worse when Christine and Snyder went drug hunting at Tiffany's home. Tiffany, Rachel, Tiffany's boyfriend Marcus Priscilla, and Marcus's cousin Edelbert Sanchez were at the home before Christine and Snyder arrived. The two of them planned to steal drugs from Tiffany's home that night. However, Snyder got into an argument with Marcus, and this led to the shootings of the 4 teens who had been in the house. They were shot by Snyder and Christine.
The kids themselves, drenched in blood. There's blood spatter that's on the walls. There's bullet holes from rounds that have gone into the victims and outside of them.
Rachel attempted to call 911 but was hit in the head by Paolilla with the butt of a gun that was used to shoot her. The rest died almost immediately before fleeing. As for the teens, they were considered victims of a drug deal gone wrong. In 2004, Paolilla entered rehab where she met Stanley Rott, a heroin user. Her relationship with Snyder ended when the latter was jailed for stealing a car. She got married to Rott in 2005. Paolilla came into a trust fund of $360,000 that had been left to her by her father. She used part of the money to buy an apartment. It was in this home that Paolilla would discover on the news that the case of her friend's murder was still open. She confessed to Rott and told him what happened. Because of this, they went into hiding. In 2006, Paolilla and her husband were arrested. Paolilla for the murders and her husband for the 70 vials of heroin that were found in their room. Rott told the police that Paolilla had confessed to him. After Paolilla was interrogated, she confessed to killing her friends. However, she said that Snyder had made her do it.
I had made the gun go off, not purposely though, but like it went to the back of the room because I was like screaming, just like shaking.
So somehow you pulled the trigger?
Yes.
Okay.
Snyder himself was never caught. When he was informed that the police had a search warrant out for him, he committed suicide by overdose in 2006. Paolilla was spared the death penalty because she was a minor at the time of the killings. Paolilla was convicted of 4 counts of capital murder on October 13, 2008. On October 14, she was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 40 years in prison. Like Paolilla, Nathaniel Abraham claimed he didn't know what he was doing when he shot someone else. Or did he?
A young killer, an 11-year-old Pontiac boy, may be tried as an adult after going on a random shooting spree that left an innocent man dead.
Nathaniel Abraham became the youngest American to be convicted of murder as an adult. On October 29, 1997, 18-year-old Ronnie Green was shot while he was standing outside a party store. A single .22 caliber bullet had been shot into his head. He died a day later. The person who had shot the gun was 11-year-old Nathaniel Abraham. He admitted that he had been firing a .22 caliber rifle in the direction of the store. He insisted that he had not meant to shoot anyone. He said he was firing randomly at trees and balloons. Nathaniel should have gotten off with accidental manslaughter, but Oakland County prosecutors said that Nathaniel had intentionally planned to kill someone that day and then bragged about it afterward. Prosecutors got permission to charge Nathaniel as an adult. He was charged with first-degree murder and the case went to trial. Nathaniel was described as someone who knew what he was doing. He reportedly told his girlfriend days before the killing that he was going to shoot someone. Despite the initial charge, the judge in charge of the case reduced the list of charges to lesser punishments. On November 16, 1999, Nathaniel Abraham was found guilty of second-degree murder. He was 13 years old at the time, but he was tried and convicted as an adult. He was sentenced to a maximum security juvenile detention center until he was 21. Even though Nathaniel showed signs of rehabilitation by the time he was released from detention, he was back in court again a few months later.
Full support. I know I've disappointed them again.
In 2008, he was arrested for possession of ecstasy. He assaulted 2 guards in 2010. He was released in 2018, but he didn't last more than a year outside. In 2019, he was once again arrested for selling meth and heroin to undercover cops. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 6 to 40 years in prison for his stint of crimes and offenses. Abraham apologized to his family for disappointing them again before he left the courtroom. Nathaniel Abraham committed a crime, but how does it compare to the horrors that Erin Caffey put her family through?
He got tired of them bickering and said, just do it. Is that true? I'm sorry?
16-year-old Erin Caffey did the unthinkable because of love. Caffey was working as a part-time waitress when she met 18-year-old Charlie Wilkinson. Things became serious between them and Charlie gave Caffey a promise ring. Erin's parents didn't like the relationship because they felt that something about Wilkinson was off. Because of their suspicions, they went online to see what they could find about Wilkinson. They found out that his page was littered with sexual references and talks about drinking alcohol. Because of this, Erin became scared that her parents would stop her from seeing Wilkinson, so she started talking about killing her family. On March 1, 2008, Erin carried her evil plan out with the help of Wilkinson and his friend, Charles Wade. Wilkinson claimed that even though he suggested that they should run away, Caffey said they should kill her parents instead. So on that day, Wilkinson and Wade entered Caffey's house while they were sleeping and shot her parents multiple times. When Caffey's mother didn't die immediately, Wade used a samurai-style sword and almost decapitated her. This killed her immediately.
He was to get revenge because we made him break up with our daughter. I heard my son Matthew cry out. He said, Charlie, why are you doing this? No, Charlie, no, please, why are you doing this?
Wilkinson and Wade shot Tyler, Erin's younger brother, and took turns slicing Erin's other brother, Matthew, till he died. Wilkinson and Wade then set fire to the house before leaving with Erin and Wade's girlfriend. Terry Caffey, Erin's father, survived the attack and told the officers that Charlie Wilkinson had attacked them. Charlie Wilkinson was found in his trailer and he was arrested. Erin was in the trailer as well, but she claimed that she had been kidnapped. Charles Wade and his girlfriend were arrested as well. However, the horrific revelation came after the police interrogated the 4 of them. Erin's story quickly fell apart because Wilkinson and Wade told the same story. Erin had orchestrated the murders. Caffey insisted that she had nothing to do with the murders.
I honestly believe that she was not the mastermind, and I'm not saying that out of denial because it's my daughter, but I don't believe my daughter's evil.
In the end, Wilkinson and Wade were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Caffey, on the other hand, was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Her father, who survived the attack, forgave her, saying that she was manipulated by Wilkinson. Erin Caffey's shocking betrayal of her own family was heartbreaking, but the next case is just as chilling. Keandra Cook, a young woman whose violent actions tore apart the lives of those around her. What was supposed to be a carjacking crime and nothing more turned deadly in Daytona, Florida. Keandra Cook was 18 years old when she committed a crime that would change her life forever. Cook had been dating her boyfriend, Kendrick Bass, for a while before he proposed a business opportunity to help them get money faster. Cook agreed to this, and they began devising a plan. On March 22, 2017, Keandra Cook went on the Meet Me social app and started talking to 28-year-old Perry Nita. Cook then lured Perry from Palm Coast to South Daytona with talks of sex and marijuana. Nita agreed to meet with Cook and told her he was on his way. He invited 18-year-old Emmanuel Purcell to ride along with him. When they got to the location, they met Cook as she promised, and she got into the pickup truck with Nita and Purcell. After she entered the pickup, Bass waited for a while before he jumped in the back seat with a gun. When Purcell noticed this, he pushed Bass, who shot Purcell before he and Cook escaped. Purcell survived and soon talked to the police about what had happened. 2 days after this happened, Cook and Bass teamed up for another carjacking. It was at the time that Cook was arrested. Bass, on the other hand, ran away and would go on to evade police for 10 months. Meanwhile, Keandria was arrested and charged under the impression that she would not be sent to jail. Regardless, she was charged with conspiracy, carjacking, attempted carjacking with a deadly weapon, and felony battery. The conspiracy charge meant that Keandria could be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Because of miscommunication with her lawyer, Keandria and her mother were assured that she would not be going to prison if she took a plea deal. Her attorney told her to enter a no-contest plea to get the conspiracy charge dropped. If she pleaded no contest to principal to carjacking with a deadly weapon, principal to attempted carjacking with a deadly weapon, and principal to aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, she would get probation and not go to jail. Or at least that's what she thought. Following the advice of her attorney, Keandria pleaded no contest and appeared in court with the belief that it was just a formality. Keandria and her mother were shocked when Circuit Judge Matt Foxman sentenced Keandria to 20 years in prison, with 20 years of probation to run concurrent with her jail time. Hearing this, Keandria and her mother began to wail very loudly. This courtroom footage quickly went viral and gained millions of views from netizens. Many people who read the story were quick to point out that it was the fault of the public defender who initially argued her case. Cook was wailing before she broke down and had to be carried out of the courtroom. She reportedly passed out. During the next court appearance, Judge Foxman allowed Cook to withdraw her plea deal after she provided a recording where her former attorney assured her that she would not be going to jail. Her sentence was also thrown out, and she was allowed to start the sentencing afresh in 2018. This time around, Cook didn't cry because she knew what she was getting herself into. She entered into a no-contest plea again, and this time she was sentenced to 11 years in prison, with 20 years of probation to run concurrent with her jail term.
I just want to say that I'm sorry for the being wrong, that her son had to get shot, because I didn't even know he was going to get shot.
Before she was escorted away, she apologized to the family of the victim, telling them that she didn't mean for their son to get shot. Keandria Cook will be free from prison in 2029. Kendrick Bass, on the other hand, was eventually caught 10 months later for an unrelated crime. Concerning the crime he committed together with Cook, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Keandria Cook's violent actions were disturbing, but the next case is even more chilling. Miranda Barber, a woman whose cold-blooded crimes, fueled by a twisted mentality, took a terrifying turn.
Don't touch me. I demand a lawyer right now. Don't touch me. No.
On November 12, 2013, the Sunbury Police Department was alerted to an unidentified body in the backyard of a residential area in Sunbury. The body was later identified as 42-year-old Troy LaFerrera. He was from Port Trevorton, 20 minutes from where his body had been found. He had been married for 2 years and had no children. Troy had been stabbed multiple times and his neck showed signs that something had been wrapped around his neck. During the investigation, Troy's phone was found on him, and the things that were found on the device gave clues as to what may have caused his death. His search history and activities showed that he had been on Craigslist looking for an escort. Investigation revealed that he was talking to Miranda Barber on the day of the murder. Miranda offered to have sex with him in exchange for payment. Miranda was a 19-year-old Alaskan woman who had just gotten married a month before to 22-year-old Elliot Barber. Miranda was born on December 14, 1994 in Alaska, where she lived with her mother and her uncle. Miranda had a rough childhood which triggered a lot of problems for her later on in life. By the time Miranda was a teenager, she had been exposed to all sorts of vices. Miranda was 18 when she met Elliot Barber, who was 21. She got pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl. Right after she gave birth, she got married to Elliot Barber on October 22, 2013. According to Miranda, the couple had planned something special to do as newlyweds for their honeymoon. It was nothing conventional. 3 weeks after they had been married, Miranda got talking with Troy LaFerrera and offered to sleep with him for $100. LaFerrera agreed, and they planned to meet in Hummel's Wharf, Pennsylvania. When Troy got to the meetup point, he paid Miranda and they drove to Sunbury. Throughout the ride and unknown to Troy, Elliot hid under a blanket in the back seat. When they got near Sunbury, Miranda signaled to Elliot, who jumped out and wrapped a cord around Troy's neck. Miranda then stabbed LaFerrera 20 times until he died. His body was dumped where he was found by police. The investigation led the police to arrest Miranda 3 weeks later.
That you did it or that you didn't do it. So I'm going to ask you right now a very basic, very simple question.
Okay.
That you need to answer either yes or no to.
Okay.
Were you involved in it, or do you have any knowledge of?
Miranda denied ever meeting Troy. She said they were texting but never met. She also denied that she had anything to do with Troy's murder and just wanted to go back to her daughter. She refused to let the police check her phone and got defensive when the police asked her questions.
Yes, I did take part. I'm in the back seat, covered up by a blanket. In between the headpiece and the bottom is where I tried to angle it up underneath it. I put my feet up against the back and pulled as hard as I could.
Eventually, Elliot confessed and told the police what happened. He explained the details, but the motive for their story changed multiple times. At first, they said that they had planned to kill someone 3 weeks after their wedding. Later on, Miranda's story changed, and she said that the reason she killed someone was because of her daughter. She said that if she murdered someone, her daughter would be taken away and adopted by someone who could give her a better life. Regardless of the story changing, Miranda and Elliot were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Where Miranda killed someone for the fun of it, the same cannot be said for 10-year-old Joey McVeigh.
You shot your mom? Yeah. Okay, the little boy shot his mom. I have the little boy here down at my house. His mom's up there. He shot his mom with a .22.
On January 2nd, 2011, 911 responders were alerted to a home in Holmes County, Ohio. 10-year-old Joey McVeigh had gone to his neighbor's house to call 911. He told the first responder that he had shot his mom with a .22 caliber rifle. When police arrived at the home, 46-year-old Deborah McVeigh was lying on the floor with a single gunshot wound to the head.
So where did you get the gun from? Your room?
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of gun did you have?
22.
A .22? Rifle, handgun, or what?
Police asked Joey questions, and he answered calmly, without missing a beat or a question. He told the police what happened, but they did not understand the motive for the murder. Joey had a 15-year-old sister, Shauna, who claimed to have witnessed what happened. She said that Joey had refused to go and get more firewood for the house when his mom told him to do so. He started arguing with his mother before shooting her in the head. According to Shauna, Joey also pointed the gun at her, but she was able to convince him not to shoot her. What he did after was shocking. After killing his mother, he looked down at her body, smirked, and left the house. When police officers came and interrogated Joey, he told them that the rifle he used to kill his mother was in the room. The police were shocked to find not one, not two, but 6 firearms in Joey's bedroom. There were many more guns around the house because they were a hunting family. According to Deborah's mother, Joey seemed responsible with firearms, so many guns weren't a sign of danger to them. When Joey was brought in by the police, it was soon revealed that Joey didn't understand much of the situation that happened.
I know when I asked you about discipline, you said that you always heard her yelling and screaming at the kids. Did you ever see her strike the kids at all?
Eventually, Joey was able to talk more about his childhood. He showed signs of anger issues and would have episodes where he would get violent but not remember what he did. Before the shooting, Joey's parents had just separated weeks before, and this may have intensified his anger issues. Joey's mother was described as abusive by her ex-husband. Deborah's mom and Joey's sister said that she was more abusive towards Joey than anyone else.
Things are the way they are.
Dad?
You feel bad that it happened, that you actually shot her?
Yeah.
Do you think it was worth it, even though you were mad?
No.
Should anyone be shot or die over an argument?
No.
On the day of the murder, Joey had been tired of the mental and emotional abuse. Deborah told her son that she wanted him gone and called him a piece of shit. Joey felt remorseful for his actions because he didn't understand why he had done it. Eventually, Joey was tested to see if he was competent to stand trial. He was not competent. He was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, as well as a learning disability. Ultimately, 10-year-old Joey was sent to a treatment facility where he could grow and learn in peace. A year later, a judge said that Joey was competent to stand trial. He was charged with murder. Prosecutors were in favor of Joey remaining in a juvenile prison until he was an adult. His sister asked the judge to give the harshest sentence possible. She described her brother as a dangerous child who killed his mother because she stood in his way. Joey pleaded guilty to murder, and he was sentenced to a treatment facility till he was 21. Up next, we unravel the chilling tale of Jamie Sylvanek, whose twisted plans led to a brutal crime that stunned the nation.
Guilty to killing her mother in 2015, now wants a trial.
Jamie Sylvanek joined the long list of female teenagers who helped kill their parents because of a relationship in 2015. Sylvanek was 14 years old when she met 20-year-old Caleb Barnes. Jamie had allegedly told Caleb that she was 17. Jamie's mother, 54-year-old Cheryl Sylvanek, found out about their relationship and was deeply concerned by it. Jamie was only in 8th grade, and she was bothered by the fact that Caleb was a 21-year-old Army officer. Because she didn't want to cause too many problems and force her daughter into ending the relationship, which could lead to something worse, Cheryl kept trying to persuade her daughter. She kept this on for a while to Jamie's irritation, but her mother kept persisting because they were in an illegal relationship. Jamie became worried that she wouldn't be able to see Caleb again and began plotting to kill her mother with Caleb. On March 15, 2015, Jamie's mother offered to drive Jamie and Caleb to a concert in her car. She did this in an attempt to talk the two of them out of the illegal relationship. While they were on their way back from the concert, Jamie's mother made a stop at a gas station to buy some things. To Cheryl's horror, she came back to the car and saw Jamie and Caleb having sex. In a fit of panic, she entered the car and showed Caleb Jamie's passport and how old she was. She accused Caleb of rape and threatened to have him arrested. All the way home, Jamie was texting Caleb, telling him that it was time to carry out the plot to kill her mother. They got to the driveway of their family home, and Cheryl confronted Caleb for maintaining a relationship with a minor.
Caleb, if she asks about your age, say 16 and a half again, and that the reason you said 20 is you were used to lying about it to fellow soldiers in the Army to avoid harassment. So when you're in stressful scenarios, it just comes out. She needs to go, Caleb, right now. You don't understand. She threatened to throw me out of the house. I want her gone.
At that moment, Caleb strangled Cheryl. She was struggling and banged her hands against the horn repeatedly, fighting for her life. To avoid drawing attention to the noise from the horn, Caleb slashed Cheryl's throat with a knife he had picked out specifically to kill Cheryl. He slashed and stabbed Cheryl Sylvanek in the neck 5 times, even though Cheryl begged for her life. Her daughter watched as Caleb killed her. After all, she had told Caleb to kill her mother because she didn't want the relationship to end. After the killing, Barnes and Jamie Sylvanek drove to a Walmart to get supplies and return to the house. Cheryl Sylvanek's body was then driven to a rural area in South Whitehall Township and set on fire. Barnes and Jamie then dumped the blood-stained car in a nearby pond before walking back to the Sylvanek home, where they went to Jamie's room. Police were alerted to a burning body and the sinking car. It didn't take long for forensics to identify Cheryl Sylvanek's body. Hours later, evidence pointed to Jamie and Caleb. They were arrested in the home and taken into custody. Jamie became the first minor to be charged as an adult. Jamie was charged with first-degree murder, criminal conspiracy, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. In court, a session that was not allowed to be recorded by the media, Jamie apologized for her actions, saying she was a monster and what she did was wrong. She told the judge that she was not forced into doing anything. She said, "I did it myself. No one made me do it. I wasn't under the influence of anyone, or any drug, or under anything but my own selfishness." Ultimately, Jamie was sentenced to 35 years to life in prison. Barnes, on the other hand, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jamie plotted to kill her mother, but didn't deliver the killing blow. How does it compare to Natasha Ellis, who was the actual murderer?
I want you to know I'm sorry for everything that happened to you and your family. I'm sorry for being tough on you.
The case of Natasha Ellis was treated with delicate attention in the media because of the nature of the case. Natasha was 15 years old when she helped a younger friend, who was 13, kill her family members. On May 23, 2019, Ellis went into the home of her friend, who remained unnamed, and attacked her family. The friend's mother, Lee A. Moore, 36, died in the attack. The younger girl's father, Paul Greer, and then 17-year-old brother were also hurt but survived. She had stabbed Lee A. Moore to death. Paul Greer sustained stab wounds to his arms and had to wear bandages for more than a year. Ellis's friend had told her what to do and provided the weapons to kill her family. Evidence revealed that the two of them were in communication up to the time when the murder and attempted murder happened. Ellis and her friend were taken into custody and charged. Ellis was tried as an adult and charged with murder, attempted murder, aggravated assault, and felonious murder. No motive was given for the attack, so 7 months later, Ellis pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. She was deemed fit to stand trial and was eventually sentenced. During her sentencing, Ellis cried as she apologized to her victims for the trauma she caused them. She claimed that she never wanted anyone to get hurt. Ultimately, Natasha Ellis was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. She also had to serve at least 22 years of her sentence before she'll be eligible for parole. Natasha Ellis's crime was horrifying, but the next case is even more chilling. Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Radcliffe, a pair whose twisted actions led to a brutal and senseless murder.
You are under arrest on suspicion of murder. Obviously you are under caution, so anything you say is getting recorded. Okay.
What if me being suspect is because I was the last person seeing the role,
And at Brianna's school, her head teachers said they would do their utmost for pupils at what she called a difficult and distressing time.
15-year-old Scarlett Jenkinson arrived at Birchwood High School in Warrington, England. At first glance, Scarlett appeared to be quiet and polite, but unbeknownst to most of her classmates, she had a dark history that would soon come to light. During the fall term of 2022, Scarlett found herself embroiled in controversy at her former school. Allegations emerged that she had brought cannabis edibles onto the playground, resulting in a child being hospitalized. Despite initial denials, the evidence against her was overwhelming, and she was soon expelled from her previous institution. Hoping for a fresh start, Scarlett transferred to Birchwood High School. Initially, she seemed a model student, performing well academically and maintaining a positive attitude. However, cracks began to appear, and it soon became apparent that Scarlett's attendance was slipping. As a result, the decision was made to send her back to her old school.
Brianna was 16 when she died. The court heard that although she was born male, she was living, dressing, and referring to herself as female. The girl who killed Brianna was fascinated by her.
At Birchwood, Scarlett met a 16-year-old girl named Brianna Gay. Brianna was a remarkable person who had come out as transgender when she was in 8th grade. She had bravely embraced her identity, wearing pants instead of the uniform skirt and experimenting with wigs, before eventually transitioning to hair extensions and hormone treatment. As a trans girl, Brianna exuded confidence and pride and gained a significant following on TikTok.
Brianna, who suffered from anxiety, had texted her mother, "I'm on the bus by myself and I'm scared," as it was not a thing she would normally have done alone. "Well, that's well good," Miss Jai replied, proud that her daughter had got out of the house to socialize.
Even though Brianna received negative comments from certain people, Brianna remained strong and resilient. She found solace in her followers, who supported her and celebrated her authenticity. Despite the acceptance of her gender identity by peers at her high school, Brianna faced challenges with her mental health and a diagnosed eating disorder. The COVID-19 pandemic further exacerbated her difficulties, leaving her feeling isolated and alone. Brianna's mother described her as vulnerable, making her the perfect target for Scarlett Jenkinson. Due to Brianna's diagnosed learning disabilities, she had personalized lessons in Birchwood's inclusion room. It was in this room that Brianna and Scarlett initially connected. They shared a common bond, as they were ostracized by their peers and sought solace in each other's company. Over time, Brianna and Scarlett started spending their free time together. They would occasionally meet after school. However, Scarlett had a reason for befriending Brianna. Scarlett's true intentions were sinister. She had devised a plan to kill Brianna, and she needed an accomplice to carry out her disturbing scheme. Enter Eddie Radcliffe, a 15-year-old boy who had known Scarlett since they first met in the 7th grade. Scarlett saw an opportunity to manipulate Eddie and recruit him into her deadly plot. She knew that Eddie's impressionable nature and lack of judgment made him the perfect pawn in her twisted game.
When Brianna Jai left home on February the 11th, it was to be for the last time.
Fast forward to February 11th, 2023, and the plan was implemented. Scarlett spent hours convincing Brianna to meet her and Eddie at Colchester Linear Park in Warrington. Brianna, unsuspecting, agreed. As the clock struck 2 p.m., Scarlett and Eddie met Brianna at a bus stop on Warrington Road. The unsuspecting victim thought they were simply meeting up and spending time together. With Brianna in tow, Scarlett and Eddie led her into the secluded confines of the park. Scarlett and Eddie sprang into action as they reached a secluded park area. They ambushed Brianna, trapping her in a vulnerable position. With brutal force, they unleashed a relentless assault on her, leaving no room for escape or defense.
A 15-year-old boy and girl remain in custody. Brianna was transgender. Police say they have no evidence to suggest her death was hate-related.
Suddenly, a dog walker stumbled upon the scene. The stranger's sudden appearance caught Scarlett and Eddie off guard, causing them to panic and flee the scene. Panic and fear consumed them as they realized their plans had been disrupted.
It laid out how she'd be led to Linear Park in Colchester in Warrington and what would happen when they got there. It was, the prosecution said, exactly what ultimately did happen.
Seeing something was wrong, the dog walker called the police at 3:13 p.m. Within minutes, officers were dispatched to the park to investigate. Upon their arrival, it became evident that Brianna had been subjected to a brutal assault. Paramedics arrived on the scene, desperately working to save her. However, their efforts were in vain. By 4:02 p.m., Brianna was pronounced dead.
In the days that followed Brianna's death, dozens of vigils were held across the country in her memory. A teenager who thought she was just going to the park for the afternoon.
According to her autopsy, Brianna had over 25 stab wounds concentrated on her neck, chest, and back. After witnesses came forward, the prime suspects quickly became Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe. Scarlett and Eddie were arrested and charged with Brianna's murder. To gather more evidence, searches were conducted in the homes of Scarlett and Eddie. The police seized their electronic devices, including Scarlett's phone and computer. When forensic experts downloaded the contents of Scarlett's phone and computer, a shocking revelation came to light. Scarlett harbored an unsettling obsession with murder and all things macabre.
Planned to kill Brianna 2 weeks earlier when the girl messaged the boy to say she's agreed to come to Colchester tomorrow. The boy replied, "So I bring my knife?" The girl said yes. Is it definitely sharp enough, by the way?
The investigators discovered a handwritten note in Scarlett's bedroom that detailed her and Eddie's plan to kill Brianna. During their investigation, the detectives stumbled upon a series of text messages between Scarlett and Eddie. Through these messages, they learned that the two teams had attempted to murder Brianna earlier in the year. Scarlett confessed that she had given Brianna ibuprofen, which made her very sick but did not kill her.
In Scarlett's case, the aggravating features are significant and would have led to a substantial uplift to the starting point, but for the mitigation, particularly that relating to maturity and mental disorder.
After a 4-week trial on December 20th, 2023, Scarlett and Eddie were found guilty of murder. Scarlett was sentenced to serve a minimum of 22 years in prison, while Eddie received a term of 20 years. The judge labeled the killing as exceptionally brutal and accused Scarlett of displaying elements of sadism and transphobic hate. Detective Inspector Nigel Parr, who worked on the case, shared his thoughts on Scarlett and Eddie's lack of remorse.
When she was alone in that park with someone that she called her friend will haunt me forever. Prior to the trial, I had moments where I felt sorry for the defendants.
Scarlett's family expressed gratitude for Brianna's mother's selflessness and empathy throughout the ordeal. They acknowledged the unimaginable pain she had endured, sharing that their last year had been beyond their worst nightmare. During an inquest into Brianna's murder, Eddie's mother spoke to defend her son, stating that he was a good child with good morals and a loving, caring family supporting him. She emphasized that he was highly intelligent, well-behaved, and on track to apply to Oxford. Our next case involves Cyntoia Brown and exposes the devastating consequences of trauma and systemic failures in our justice system.
Cameras were rolling as she described Cutthroat to a psychiatrist.
I remember one time, the first time he did something to me is when he choked me and I passed out because he said I thought he was a joke.
Tests would show Brown was on the fetal alcohol spectrum, a disorder that impacts the brain and behavior.
Cyntoia Brown was born to a mother struggling with drug addiction and faced a difficult journey from the start. Her mother, unable to care for her, made the difficult decision to give her up for adoption. She was adopted by loving parents.
What else did he do to you? He talked real bad to me and jacked me up. He pulled me by my hair and dragged me and stuff. He put guns up me, told me to strap and stuff like that, getting that with other people.
Unfortunately, Cyntoia's life was not without its challenges. As a young teen, she made a series of bad choices, leading to her being handed over to the custody of the Department of Children and Family Services. Cyntoia's determination to escape her circumstances led her to run away, leaving her homeless on the streets of Nashville.
She granted Berman access to the then teenager all the way through her criminal trial.
During her tumultuous time on the streets, Cyntoia encountered a ruthless predator. This individual, taking advantage of her vulnerability, started to traffic her. On August 6, 2004, Cyntoia's fateful encounter with Johnny Allen, a 43-year-old real estate agent and Sunday school teacher, would change her life forever.
I think he's gonna hit me or do something like that, but then he rolls over and reaches, like he's reaching to the side of the bed or something, so I'm thinking, no, he's not finna hit me, he's finna get a gun.
And what did you do at that time?
I just grabbed the gun and I shot him.
Cyntoia claims she agreed to engage in intercourse with Johnny for $150, but according to her testimony, the deed never happened. At some point, she thought Johnny was reaching for his weapon. Terrified, Cyntoia reached for the gun Johnny had hidden in his nightstand and shot him in the back of the head, killing him instantly. Panic-stricken, Cyntoia stole $172 from Johnny, as well as 2 guns. She then fled the scene in his truck. Despite Cyntoia's young age, the courts decided to try her as an adult, which sparked debate. The Metro Juvenile Court judge justified their decision by saying it was too great a risk to the community to keep Cyntoia in the juvenile system. Cyntoia alleged she killed Johnny in self-defense. She said Johnny had intimidated her by standing over her while she was in his bed. However, the prosecution argued that when Johnny was found, he was in a sleeping pose, casting doubt on her self-defense claim. They alleged that Cyntoia killed Johnny as he slept in bed to rob him. During Cyntoia's trial, 3 inmates who had spent time with her in prison testified that Cyntoia confessed to killing Johnny Allen. These inmates claimed that Cyntoia admitted the murder and even expressed satisfaction in taking another human being's life. Another inmate came forward with a letter allegedly written by Cyntoia. In the letter, Cyntoia supposedly admitted to lying to the police about certain aspects of the case. She allegedly stated that everything she had told police was true, except for one crucial detail: her belief that Johnny was reaching for a gun. To further complicate matters, a forensic document expert testified in his opinion regarding the letter. He stated that the note written by Cyntoia appeared to be authentic and consistent with her handwriting. This revelation left the jury questioning the credibility of Cyntoia's statements.
60 years behind bars. Even with good behavior, Brown would have to serve at least 51 years before any chance of parole.
Yeah, it's over with now.
Cyntoia's defense argued that Johnny had planned to sexually assault Cyntoia if she did not kill him in self-defense. They presented witnesses who testified that Johnny had a dark side and had previously engaged in inappropriate behavior towards women. One witness claimed that Johnny took her to his home, kissed her against her will, and when she told him she didn't want to be intimate, he assaulted her.
Allen's murder, Brown was eventually charged, tried, and convicted as an adult.
Guilty, first-degree murder.
The jury ultimately found Cyntoia guilty of first-degree murder, felony murder, and aggravated robbery, leading to her receiving a life sentence. This sentence was particularly shocking, considering Cyntoia's age at her conviction. In 2018, the Tennessee Board of Parole held a hearing on Cyntoia's clemency petition. This hearing allowed witnesses who knew Cyntoia to testify on her behalf.
I just wanted to say thank you. I know a lot of people get to see you, but I have prayed for a very long time.
Cyntoia's hearing took place on May 28, 2018, with Cyntoia's fate hanging in the balance. After months of deliberation, on January 7, 2019, Cyntoia's sentence of life in prison was commuted to 15 years plus 10 years of supervised parole. This significant decision marked a turning point in Cyntoia's life, offering her a chance at rehabilitation and reintegration into society. The judge presiding over the case stated that transformation should be accompanied by hope, echoing the importance of second chances and the potential for redemption. Johnny's family, devastated by the loss of their son, strongly disagreed with the decision to allow Cyntoia to walk free. They believed that justice had not been served and that her life sentence should have been upheld. The officers involved in the case shared the same sentiment, believing that Cyntoia's release was a miscarriage of justice.
She is someone that has completely rehabilitated herself.
The president granted Johnson's pardon, saying those who pay their debt to society and better themselves in prison deserve a second chance.
Since her release, Cyntoia Brown has become a prominent figure, using her voice to raise awareness about domestic minor sex trafficking and the criminal justice system's treatment of young offenders. She has been the featured keynote speaker for different groups nationwide, captivating audiences with her story of survival and resilience. As we turn from the chilling case of Cyntoia Brown, prepare to meet Amber Wright.
Family showed baby pictures of Seth. Kyle Hooper himself took the stand.
15-year-old Seth Jackson lived in Bellevue, Florida, and dated 15-year-old Amber Wright for 3 months. However, unbeknownst to Seth, Amber had also been seeing 18-year-old Michael Bargo. This love triangle created intense jealousy and resentment, becoming a full-blown toxic dynamic between Seth and Amber. In March 2011, Seth and Amber decided to end their relationship. However, since this was the age of social media, Facebook played a crucial role in the aftermath. Both Seth and Amber took shots at one another, exchanging insults and fueling the flames of their broken relationship.
And then Amber Wright started dating Michael Bargo.
When Amber was with Michael, she would lie and tell him that Seth had harmed her. This false information enraged Michael, and on one particular day, he confronted Seth in their yard, threatening him with, "I have a bullet with your name on it."
And Michael Bargo started talking about, we need to kill Seth Jackson. Nobody likes him. We need to kill him.
On April 17, 2011, Michael approached Amber's brother, 16-year-old Kyle Hooper, and told him that they needed to kill Seth Jackson. Michael then recruited 20-year-old Justin Soto and 18-year-old Charlie Ely to assist him in the murder plot.
He was shot once, but he got out and he made it almost to the road.
That night, Amber reached out to Seth, urging him to meet her at Charlie's house. Seth, sensing a trap, hesitated at first, but Amber reassured him that they just wanted to discuss the possibility of getting back together. Eventually, Seth relented. When he arrived, he was immediately attacked by Kyle, who struck him on the head with a wooden object. Amber and Charlie watched from the sidelines as Michael emerged armed, aiming a .22 caliber gun at Seth. In a shocking turn of events, Michael opened fire, wounding Seth. Despite suffering injuries, Seth managed to escape the confines of the trailer and reach safety outside. However, Justin tackled him. Still armed with his gun, Michael pursued Seth and shot him again. Weak and disoriented, Seth managed to reach safety outside Charlie's trailer. However, Justin and Michael promptly brought him back inside, restraining him in the bathtub. Michael continued to shoot at Seth, aiming for his face, eventually killing him.
They burned the body, and to me what made it atrocious is that they sat out there and basically treated it as if a bonfire was a party. All of them sat outside.
Michael and Justin took Seth's lifeless body and put it in a sleeping bag, and then threw it into a fire. They watched as flames consumed the body, eventually erasing any trace of their crimes. The group used bleach to clean the crime scene and shoveled the remains from the fire into 3 buckets. Amber Wright and Kyle Hooper's mother's boyfriend played a crucial role in covering up the crime, taking the buckets of Seth's remains and transporting them to a rock quarry in Ocala, Florida.
People are gonna fucking hate us for this. People that don't even know us are gonna be looking for us if we get out of this.
Why?
There's a fucking 15-year-old kid murdered.
After Seth's disappearance made the news, Kyle Hooper confessed to the murder, realizing the severity of the situation. Despite initially feigning ignorance, the 3 accomplices, when alone in the interrogation room, made incriminating statements that led detectives to the conclusion that they all played a significant role in what happened.
I have Mom in here while you talk to me about it. That's okay with you? Okay. Okay, Seth comes to the house.
Seth knocked on the door and Charlie answered it, and she was like, well, what do you want?
Everyone involved in Seth's murder was subsequently arrested, with Michael Bargo being sentenced to death. Amber, her brother Kyle, Charlie Ely, and Justin Soto were sentenced to life in prison. Amber's mother's boyfriend pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact, acknowledging his role in the cover-up. Amber was retried for Seth's murder in 2016 after an appellate court raised questions about the timing of her Miranda rights during the initial trial. Despite the guilty verdict, there was hope for a lighter sentence due to a technicality. However, the judge ultimately decided that Amber would continue to serve a life sentence, with the possibility of review in 25 years. Throughout the trial, Amber's family and prison ministry spoke glowingly about her personal growth and transformation since being behind bars. Amber herself addressed the judge, expressing her guilt and remorse for her actions. She assured the court that she was committed to becoming a better person.
Our lives will never be the same, as we will never see our son grow up or have children.
The events leading to the death of Seth Jackson were described as nothing short of despicable by the judge. Amber's actions left a lasting impact on Seth's family, and their pain was evident when they addressed Amber directly. Sonia Jackson, Seth's mother, expressed her hope that Amber would experience a lifetime of guilt, knowing that she had caused so much pain. Next, Julia Egler, a troubled teen, embarked on a deadly rampage, claiming the lives of her own mother and her boyfriend.
What could be the motive behind what is truly a brutal, premeditated crime? It's kind of hard to comprehend why a daughter would kill her own mother, but what makes it even more confusing and disturbing is the disconnect.
In July 2024, a shocking incident unfolded when 16-year-old Julia Egler called 911 to report an intruder breaking into her home. The dispatcher quickly sprang into action, attempting to gather as much information as possible. Julia described the alleged intruder as normal height,
telling police it was that intruder who shot the teen's mother, 42-year-old Kelly McCollum, and McCollum's boyfriend, 22-year-old Matthew Zenrock, before eventually changing the story under pressure from detectives.
As the situation escalated, Julia revealed a shocking turn of events. The intruder, she discovered, had gained entry by using a hammer in their backyard. Julia said she acted swiftly, grabbing the dogs and taking them to her room. However, as time went on, Julia started to panic. She informed the dispatcher that her mother, Kelly McCollum, and her mother's boyfriend, Matthew Zenrock, had been out shopping, and she anxiously awaited their return.
I had to make a 911 operator believe someone had just broken into her house. In reality, Palm Bay police say 16-year-old Julia Egler had just brutally murdered her mother and her mother's boyfriend.
Minutes later, police officers arrived to find the horrifying scene. Kelly and Matthew lay lifeless, covered in blood. The detectives began their investigation, meticulously piecing together the clues leading them closer to the truth. One name stood out as the investigation progressed: Kelly's teen daughter, Julia.
Bombay were victims of a horrible crime. 38-year-old Kelly McCollum and 22-year-old Matthew Snedrock were found dead by police just after midnight on July 7th.
The detectives quickly identified Julia as a potential suspect, and the evidence seemed to point in her direction. One of the turning points in the case came when investigators found a bloody shoe print impression that matched a pair that Julia owned. This discovery raised suspicions and cast doubt on her initial claim that an intruder was responsible. As the investigators examined the CCTV footage from the house's security cameras, they saw that the footage showed no intruder entering the house after Kelly and Matthew arrived home that night. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Julia finally confessed to the murders of her mother and her boyfriend. Julia explained that she had an issue with her mother dating Matthew, and she had decided to take action. On the day of the murders, Julia devised a plan to take her mother's gun and a knife from the kitchen. She then waited for the perfect opportunity to strike.
Greeting the couple with, "Welcome home," with the gun in the teen's hand and the knife in the teen's right pants pocket.
When her mother and Matthew arrived home, Julia eagerly awaited her moment. Julia unleashed her pent-up anger as her mother and Matthew opened the door. She shouted, "Welcome home," before shooting her mother several times. However, Julia's rage was far from sated. She turned her attention to Matthew, firing several shots in his direction. Matthew, terrified for his life, begged her to stop. Julia followed him into the bathroom, armed with a knife. She relentlessly stabbed him after the gun ran out of ammo. As time went on, Matthew's condition deteriorated. He begged Julia to take him out of his misery. Julia obliged. She walked into her mother's bedroom, loaded another round into the gun, and returned to the bathroom with the weapon in her hand. In the bathroom, Matthew lay helpless and weak. Julia, still consumed by her rage, pulled the trigger, delivering a final, devastating blow. A gunshot rang out, killing Matthew instantly. Julia was indicted by a grand jury and arraigned on 2 counts of first-degree murder. Julia's case is complex. A public defender currently represents her and has yet to enter a plea. Her future remains uncertain as she awaits the court's verdict. Another crucial factor impacting her sentence is that she will be tried as an adult.
And there have been apparently disagreements about Egler's decision to change genders.
One key difference between Florida's juvenile and adult justice systems is the focus on rehabilitation rather than punishment. Juvenile courts aim to address the specific needs and circumstances of the juvenile offender, considering factors such as age, maturity, and potential for rehabilitation. This allows the court to consider alternative sentencing options, such as probation or community service, rather than incarceration. Julia Egler's tragic crime was haunting, but the next case is just as disturbing. Lionel Tate, a young boy whose brutal actions at just 12 years old left everyone in disbelief. Our first case comes from Florida. In 2001, Lionel Alexander Tate found himself at the center of a tragic incident that changed his entire life in the worst way possible. At the young age of 14, Lionel received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the death of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick, a case that made him the youngest person in the United States to be handed such a sentence. The incident unfolded on July 28, 1999, in Pembroke Park, Florida, when Lionel's mother, Kathleen Grossett Tate, was babysitting 6-year-old Tiffany Unick for the evening. Lionel, then 12, and Tiffany were watching TV after dinner when Kathleen went upstairs, unaware of what would happen next. Around 10:40 p.m., Lionel approached his mother, claiming Tiffany wasn't breathing. Lionel, weighing 170 pounds, claimed he was play wrestling with the 48-pound Tiffany and that an accident happened.
Tiffany's death could not have been a wrestling accident.
This little girl suffered over 35 injuries to her body.
But the prosecution would later paint a much darker picture. They cited 35 injuries, including a cracked skull, broken rib, lacerated liver, and hemorrhaged kidneys. According to the prosecution, these injuries are comparable to those one might sustain from falling off a 3-story building. Lionel was tried as an adult for first-degree murder despite the absence of perceived intent or premeditation. The prosecution proposed a plea deal, second-degree murder with a 3-year prison term and 10 years of probation. But Lionel chose to face the trial. The legal consequences were severe, as the judge sentenced Lionel Tate to life imprisonment. In delivering the sentence, the judge emphasized that Lionel Tate's actions were not the playful acts of a child, but rather cold, callous, and indescribably cruel.
Joel Lazarus might find a legal loophole and hand down a lighter sentence. That was not to be the case. Incarceration for your natural life. The now 14-year-old Lionel Tate was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
At an age when he was supposed to be playing with his friends and learning about life, then 14-year-old Lionel Tate was convinced of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on March 9, 2001. As he was being sentenced, he sat there with empty eyes, perhaps still unaware that his life was over before it even began. Following Lionel Tate's conviction, the prosecution openly sided with Tate's plea for leniency in sentencing and even offered assistance in his appeal. This unusual collaboration drew criticism from the trial judge, who accused the prosecution of compromising the integrity of the legal system. The judge pointed out that if the prosecution believed life imprisonment was not warranted, they should not have pursued a first-degree murder charge in the first place. In January 2004, a state appeals court decided to overturn Tate's conviction on the grounds that his mental competency had not been sufficiently evaluated before the trial. This development led Tate to reconsider the same plea deal he had initially rejected. As a result, he was released on 1 year's house arrest and placed on 10 years probation. But Tate's troubles with the law were not over. On May 25, 2005, he was charged with armed burglary and battery, armed robbery, and violation of probation. The incident unfolded when Tate threatened Domino's pizza delivery man Walter Ernest Gallardo with a handgun outside a friend's apartment after placing an order. Gallardo, fearing for his safety, dropped the pizzas and fled the scene. Tate then re-entered the apartment and attacked an occupant who did not want him inside. Gallardo quickly called 911 upon reaching the Domino's store and returned to identify Tate, though no firearm was found. On March 1, 2006, Tate accepted a plea bargain, admitting to violating probation by carrying a firearm during the robbery. Despite withdrawing his guilty plea for robbery, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison on May 18, 2006 for violating probation. Florida's 4th District Court of Appeal upheld this sentence on October 24, 2007. On February 19, 2008, Tate entered a no-contest plea for the robbery charge and received a sentence of 10 years in state prison. He's currently being held in the Charlotte Correctional Institution, serving his remaining sentence. Our next case is a roller coaster you won't see coming. Lionel Tate's crime at such a young age was chilling, but the next case is just as dark. Nicholas Lindsay, a teenager whose violent actions were fueled by anger and a desire for revenge. We're moving on with a case again from Florida. On February 21, 2011, near Tropicana Field in Florida, 46-year-old police officer David Crawford responded to a 911 call about a suspicious individual. The caller reported a man holding a brick in a backyard, who then jumped a fence, raising concerns for a potential burglary. Upon arriving at the scene, Officer Crawford spotted the individual and left his vehicle. At 10:37 p.m., Officer Donald J. Ziegler observed and reported an exchange of gunfire. Officer Ziegler then discovered Officer Crawford lying near his cruiser, having sustained multiple close-range gunshot wounds while reaching for a notepad. The assailant fled the scene, and there began a large-scale manhunt involving over 200 officers from various agencies across Tampa Bay. The search came to an end on February 22, 2011, as community tips led police to 16-year-old Nicholas Lindsay. At first, he gave conflicting statements and claimed he was innocent despite the evidence. Then, his family was brought in. Lindsay's mother, Deneen Sweet, encouraged her son to be honest as she stood by him along with his father. A police chief said Lindsay eventually broke down and confessed to discarding the firearm in a nearby creek. Despite attending school on the day of the shooting, Lindsay's educational record is marked by a concerning pattern of absenteeism, having missed 40 days during the school year. Gibbs High School's former principal, Kevin Gordon, had discussions with Lindsay about his class attendance. Both Gordon and a teacher acknowledged that, in their interactions, Lindsay consistently complied with authority. Karen Morse, one of Lindsay's teachers, described him as a typical teenager who sought attention from teachers to do his best academically. But Lindsay's behavior outside the school presented a different character. His Facebook page indicated an affiliation with a gang. On March 7, 2011, he faced an indictment by a grand jury on a first-degree murder charge, setting the stage for a legal process that would change the rest of his life. On March 23, 2012, Nicholas Lindsay was convicted for Officer Crawford's murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the legal landscape shifted for him with the introduction of a new sentencing law, which held that the maximum sentence could only be life with a review after 25 years. In October 2013, this law played a role in upholding Nicholas Lindsay's life sentence after an appeal. On January 20th, 2017, Lindsay's attorneys sought a reduction of his sentence to 40 years. But just a week after, Lindsay received yet another life sentence. But this time, Lindsay wasn't listening to the judge in silence. He was actually grinning, the least expected move that could ever be pulled by an individual who just received a staggering life sentence, twice. The judge claimed that the sentence would undergo a review in 2036, which would mark 25 years served. As of right now, Nicholas Lindsay remains incarcerated in the Blackwater River Correctional Facility and looks like he won't be getting out anytime soon. Now, we've saved the best one for last. Nicholas Lindsay's violent actions were shocking, but the next case is equally tragic. Dante Wright, a young man whose life was cut short by a tragic encounter with law enforcement. In 2016, Jordan Klee lived in Ann Arbor with his mother, Karen. Having lost his father just 4 months after the birth, Jordan never had the opportunity to meet him, but he found a strong father figure in his grandfather, who played a crucial role in shaping Jordan's character and skills. Despite being a widow, Karen worked tirelessly to provide her son with the best possible life. Jordan ended up as a remarkably athletic and sporty guy, especially in biking and skiing. He also became one of the top players at his school in football. Alongside his athletic achievements, Jordan was also thriving academically with high grades and various school activities. But Jordan Klee's promising future was cut short on October 4th, 2016, just as he was expecting his high school graduation and looking forward to attending Michigan University. He had dreams of joining the university's football team, but these dreams were quickly shattered. Around 3 p.m. on that day, a maintenance worker on duty at Pine Lake Village made a grim discovery. While working inside the building, he went outside and found a young man lying still on the ground. He also observed a pool of blood surrounding the victim's head and identified a single gunshot wound to the middle of his forehead. The case was ruled a homicide, and it wasn't too long before the perpetrator got caught. It was 17-year-old Dante Wright. On March 5th, the courtroom atmosphere became heavy with emotion as Dante Wright openly admitted to his involvement, along with 2 other friends, in an attempted gunpoint robbery of 18-year-old Jordan Klee. According to the prosecution, the boys were affiliated with a gang. On this emotional day in court, Jordan Klee's family took the stand to share the pain and overwhelming loss she had experienced since the murder of their beloved Jordan. Her mother was struggling to hold back tears as she kept being strong for her family and for the memory of Jordan. To this heartfelt moment, Dante Wright decided to react with a grin on his face, almost as if he had zero regrets. His seemingly indifferent behavior shocked everyone in that courtroom that day, including the judge. As Wright took the stand, he seemed like he genuinely believed that he was going to get away with it.
I just want to tell y'all I'll be home soon, or I'll be Keon. I love my family.
That, of course, made it all worse. Despite Wright having already pleaded guilty to the murder of Jordan Klee, Judge Swartz decided to reconsider the initial plea deal given the teen's behavior in court. Wright's smirk only faded when the judge sentenced Wright for the second-degree murder of 23 to 50 years. Dante Wright's defense lawyer, David Goldstein, attempted to offer an explanation for his client's disturbing behavior in court. Goldstein argued that Wright was only 17 years old and that he grinned because he was afraid, not because he was proud of what he did. But the judge obviously wasn't convinced. The trial surrounding Jordan Klee's murder was a challenging and emotional process for all involved, but it played a very important role in bringing closure to Klee's family and making sure that justice was served. These stories expose the dark realities of young lives consumed by violence and tragedy. But the journey doesn't end here. There's more to uncover as we explore the disturbing forces behind these unimaginable acts. Don't miss the next video. It's one that will stay with you.